Lizi the Lizard's Journey into the World of Men. Prologue. In a corner forgotten by the world, hidden among reeds and branches bent towards the waters, lay the Land of Nale, a place where nature still whispered its secrets in the language of the wind, and animals lived in peace, far from the hurried steps of men. Here, on the banks of the Aled River, under warm stones and between tall blades of grass, lived her life a lizard with lively eyes and a brave heart. Lizi was no ordinary lizard. While others were content with the rays of the sun and the safety of their hiding places, she dreamed of unknown worlds, of high forests and boundless plains, of strange creatures and untold stories. Ever since she was little, she had been curious, asking questions and listening attentively to the elders of the land. But one thought would not give her peace. What would happen to her older sister Luma, who disappeared a long time ago? As time passed, the desire for adventure intertwined with the need for answers. And on an ordinary day, with the smell of dew and soft breezes, Lizi decided to leave. Together with her best friend, Tano, a playful but loyal lizard, she set off on a journey that would change her life. No one would have thought that two small lizards would travel through forests, lakes and villages, meet talking animals and penetrate deep into the world of people, a place full of sounds, movement and mystery. But Lizi had something that many had forgotten: the courage to dream and an open heart towards the unknown. This is her story, a journey that begins with a question and ends with a revelation, an adventure about friendship, discovery and the mysterious connection between people and nature, a lesson about how the smallest beings can change the world. And maybe, if you listen with an open heart, you will hear it too, the whisper of a lizard who had the courage to believe that the world was bigger than it seemed. Chapter 1. On the banks of the Aled River. The morning sun sent its warm rays over the Nale land, where the forests were green and dense, and the rivers flowed clear and cheerful among the stones smoothed by time. The Aled River, known by all the creatures of the forest as the most playful and clean river, made its way through the bushes of wild mint and wildflowers, giving life to the entire land. On its sandy shore, on a clear summer morning, two little lizards were playing happily, Lizi and her best friend, Tano. Lizi was a nimble little lizard, with bright green scales and a white stripe that went down from her neck to her tail. She had big, curious eyes, always on the move, always ready to discover something new. Tano, on the other hand, was a little slower, but more attentive. He was darker in color, with a golden-brown tint, and he seemed to take his game seriously, as if every move mattered. They played shadow-catching, an invention of Tano, chasing each other on the shore, trying to step on each other's shadow projected on the sand. They rolled, ran and laughed in their silent language, made from the language of movements, touches and vibrations. "I got you, Tano," Lizi shouted, jumping over a large burdock leaf and landing right in her friend's shadow. Tano giggled. "No, it's just the tail. You have to catch my whole body. Come on, try again." Lizi turned her head and looked at the sky. The clouds floated lazily, and a crane was making its way north. She felt a shiver of unease, although everything around seemed perfect. "Tano, have you noticed that people have been coming to this shore more often for some time now?" she asked, with a hint of concern in her voice. Tano stopped playing and nodded. "Yes, and they leave strange things behind. Boxes, bottles, and sometimes pieces of bread. Some animals have started to walk towards them. You think we should look too?" Lizi hesitated. Once, she had seen a frog trapped in a plastic bag he had never managed to get out. And another time, a sick fox had eaten something spoiled and had not been seen by anyone since. "I don't know, Tano, but I'd like to know more about these people. What are they? How do they live? Why do they come here and why do they seem so different?" Tano looked at her in surprise. "Do you really want to know more about people?" Lizi sighed. "Yes, I feel like I should. I've always been told that nature is our place, but something in me tells me that I need to see something else. Maybe the world is bigger than our forest and the Aled River." Tano remained silent. A bird flew overhead, and the wind brought the smell of rain from afar. "If you leave, I won't come with you, Lizi. I like it here. But I'll wait for you. I'll miss you." Lizi felt her lizard heart tighten, but she couldn't stop. The thought of discovering the world of people was too strong. It was more than curiosity. It was a calling. A few days later, Lizi prepared to leave. She visited all her favorite places: the blackberry bush where she hid from the rain, the warm hollow between the roots where she slept on cold nights, and even a flat rock where she used to sit in the sun. After playing, she left a small trace of herself there, an eggshell from when she was born, a dry leaf, and a smooth stone that she had collected. Tano came to say goodbye. He gave her a small bag woven from field grass. Chapter 2. Mother's Memory and the Desire for Adventure. I don't know. Maybe she is. Maybe not. But I have to find out. I've lived with this question in my heart for too long. Tano sighed deeply. He looked at her and saw not just a young lizard, but a being who had found her purpose, an adventurer. Then go, Lizi, and take care of yourself. I will watch over the riverbank while you are gone. They hugged tightly, and Lizi set off, this time with a deeper motivation than mere curiosity, love for her sister and the desire to understand her past. The journey was not easy. Nature changed its face as she approached the world of people. The leaves were sparser, the air drier, and the sounds were different. It was no longer just the chirping of birds or the rustling of the wind, but unfamiliar mechanical noises, rustling, high voices, heavy footsteps, slamming doors. After a whole day of walking, she reached the edge of a garden. She hid between two stones and looked around. It was an orderly place, with flowers in straight rows, trimmed bushes, and a smooth flagstone path. From a nearby house she could hear a child's laughter. That little girl on who had spotted her before was playing in the sand again. Lizi observed her carefully, and in a strange way, she reminded her of Luma. Maybe because she laughed the same way, maybe because she had a light in her eyes that resembled her sister's. In an impulsive gesture, Lizi slowly came out of hiding and approached. Anna saw her and, to her surprise, she didn't scream or run. She knelt in front of her and smiled. "You're back," said the little girl. "Do you know that I dreamed of you? In my dream, you were flying among the stars and leaving traces of light." Lizi understood that she was safe. She climbed onto a rock and looked into the girl's eyes. That moment, a silent trust was born between the two. Anna went into the house and returned with a piece of paper. She had drawn a childish map. On it appeared the house, the river, a large tree, and something that looked like a forest with the sign "Dangerous" written in clumsy letters. "Here is the area where my grandfather says that injured animals were once found," Anna continued. "Maybe it's far away, but who knows? Maybe it can help you. Do you want to go there?" Lizi looked at the drawing. Maybe it was just a child's play, or maybe it was just a sign. Her heart filled with hope. She took a step, then another, looking in the direction indicated by the map. Anna followed her, silent. Then she said slowly, almost in a whisper, "Go back, okay?" Lizi paused for a moment, turning to the little girl. She bowed her head in a gesture that resembled a smile. Then she set off. Under the gentle rays of the sunset, the lizard set off on a new stage of her journey. With the image of her mother in her heart, with the longing for her sister as a guiding flame, and with the unexpected help of a human being, Lizi felt that she was no longer just a little lizard in the forest. She was a seeker of truth, a messenger of the connection between worlds. Each step took her closer to the answers, but also to her transformation. The adventure had just begun, and Lizi's heart was ready. Chapter 3. The Danger Called Mamba. The sunrise colored the sky in a mixture of orange and gold, and the valley of the Land River was still quiet, with only a few drops of dew glistening on the burdock leaves. Lizi stood at the edge of a meadow, preparing to embark on a new segment of her journey. But that morning, to her surprise, Tano was waiting for her on a smooth stone, with a shy smile and his tail slightly raised. "I couldn't stay away," he said simply. "If it's about looking for your sister, then you can't do it alone." Lizi looked at him gratefully. Part of her heart was relieved. An adventure, no matter how necessary, is easier to take when you have a friend by your side. And so, the two set off together on the road that would take them even closer to the border with the human world. Along the way, the path took them through dense forests, tall grass, and unknown places. It wasn't long before they reached a swampy area where the ground was soft, and the smell of stagnant water hung in the air. Here, the Land River widened and turned into a scattered delta, with narrow channels and islands of mud. Lizi had never been this far. And unfortunately, she didn't know that she had stepped into forbidden territory. "Does it seem quiet to you?" Tano asked in a whisper, his eyes narrowed. "Nothing can be heard, no birds, no frogs." "It's too quiet," Lizi replied. "Maybe they should." She didn't have time to finish the sentence. Suddenly, the surface of the water to their left suddenly rose, and a huge wave broke at the edge of the canal. A triangular head emerged from the water, with shiny scales, yellow eyes and a black tongue that moved menacingly. Mamba! Tano roared and instinctively jumped back. The mamba was a water snake known throughout the Nale land for its cruelty and strength. It was not just a predator, but a ruthless, cunning and fast hunter. It was said that a single look from its eyes could paralyze you with fear. Lizi froze for a moment, but instinct made her roll under a root. Tano slipped on a wet stone and fell into a low area, close to the water. The mamba turned towards him, hissing briefly, and prepared to attack. Tano! Lizi shouted desperately. There was no time. There was no room for hesitation. Without thinking, she rushed towards her friend, trying to pull him by the tail back to land. The mamba had already arched, and the bite was imminent. Suddenly, the air was filled with a strange sound, a rhythmic rustling, like wind passing through a web from a crack in the stone. A huge spider, with long legs and a shiny brown body, quickly descended. It was no ordinary spider, but an old one, with clear and sure eyes. It moved elegantly, without fear, and seemed to know exactly what it was doing. The spider launched a thick, silver thread directly at the mamba's head. The snake turned angrily, but the thread touched it between the eyes and stuck to it. Within seconds, a shower of shiny threads descended on it, sticking to its powerful neck and upper body. Shocked and temporarily blinded, the mamba began to struggle, but the spider had already moved strategically, throwing more and more threads. With amazing precision, it managed to block its mouth, wrapping it enough to make it retreat into the water, angry and frustrated. "Go away now," said the spider to Lizi and Tano. "There is no time left. It will break free and I will not be able to intervene." The lizards did not hesitate. They fled through the grass, then through a narrow corridor formed between two rocks, until they reached a safe place, away from the canal. They stopped only when their breathing calmed down. Tano was trembling slightly, and Lizi had a heart the size of a pea. But they were alive, and they owed that to someone unknown. Who was it? Tano asked, looking back. "Come on," they heard their savior again. "You have a lot to learn." A few minutes later, they were in a small but warm cave, covered with shiny webs and strangely comfortable. The spider offered them a leaf with fresh dew and a few blackberry berries. "My name is Aaron," he said finally. "I am the guardian of the southern waters. I know who Mamba is. And I also know who you are." Lizi looked at him suspiciously. "Were you following us?" Aaron nodded slightly. "I was watching you. Did I heard about you, Lizi? About your search. About your sister, Luma." Lizi froze. "Have you met her? She passed through here many seasons ago, as brave as you. But also in a hurry. Mamba was younger then. She wasn't as dangerous, but not weak either. She didn't have your luck. She was wounded, but not caught. She managed to escape and continue to the edge of the human world. That's all I know." Silence fell heavy between them. Lizi felt emotion pressing down on her chest. "So it's possible she's alive?" "It's possible, but the danger increases with every step. Mamba isn't the only predator. The human world is full of traps, but there's also hope. You have a brave heart, Lizi. Not everyone has it." Tano, who had remained silent until then, cleared his throat. "And you? Why did you save us?" Aaron smiled, a strange but warm smile. "Because once, someone saved me too. And because not all little ones have to die in the clutches of the big ones." That night, Lizi slept more peacefully than in recent weeks. She had been close to death, but she had survived. In Aaron's eyes she had seen something she had not often encountered, wisdom and compassion. And in her heart, hope had ignited again. The world had lived. The journey had continued. And now, Lizi was determined to follow in his footsteps, no matter how dangerous the road was. The Mamba had been just an obstacle. There were others, for sure. But Lizi was no longer alone. Tano was by her side. Aaron had become an ally, and something burned within her that no snake could extinguish, the courage to seek the truth. Chapter 4. Helping the Tortoise Turtle. Morning was slowly rising over the wet meadows of the Nale land, and the fog was melting in the rays of the sun like a promise of a milder day. After the tense encounter with Mamba and the night spent safely next to the spider Aaron, Lizi and Tano resumed their journey. Although tired, a new determination shone in their eyes. The world was there, somewhere, and now they had a new destination, the edge of the human world. But the path was not at all clear. The forests were narrowing, the water was becoming more and more murky, and the indications of the right direction were increasingly rare. They were in an unknown land, where the stones seemed to have memory, and the wind whispered old names. Feeling that they could not go blindly any further, Lizi stopped and said in a low voice, "We need a sign, someone to show us the road. Otherwise we get lost." Tano, although less spiritual, did not contradict her. And as in a dream at that very moment, from a recess shaded by reeds, a light sound was heard, like a long and old sigh. Out of the grass emerged a massive creature, with a shell stained by time and deep eyes, like two quiet puddles. It walked slowly but surely, leaving heavy tracks in the damp earth. It was a turtle. Not an ordinary turtle, but a venerable one, with reddish scales and legs as solid as tree trunks. Green moss and small flowers had grown on its shell. It seemed to carry a garden on its back. It approached without haste, as if it knew it was expected. "Greetings, guides," he said in a low voice, like the earth after the rain. "I am Turta." Lizi and Tano looked at each other, amazed by the calm and presence of this being. We are glad, Mrs. Turta," said Lizi, bowing her head respectfully. "We are looking for a place, Crystal Lake, and my sister Luma. Have you ever heard of her?" Turta closed her eyes for a moment, then said, "The name of Luma was carried by the wind many seasons ago. She passed by here too once. Just as brave, but in a hurry. She asked the same thing. I told her what I tell you. The road to Crystal Lake is not a path on a map. It is a choice of the heart." Tano grimaced. "With all due respect, that sounds a bit vague. We need directions, not poems." The cake laughed softly, and her laughter sounded like the rustling of old leaves. "Wisdom is not vague, my young man. It is only deep. Simple truths rarely lead far. But you are in luck. I am old, but I have not forgotten. If you will be patient, I can show you the way." She turned slowly and invited them to follow her. For hours, Lizi and Tano followed Turta through a changing landscape. They passed through green swamps, under old trees whose trunks seemed carved by time, and past springs that gushed from the rocks like the tears of the earth. Every time Tano grumbled that they were going too slowly, Turta only said, "Haste is good only for those who run, not for those who seek." Finally, they arrived in a silent clearing, where everything was covered with silver grass. In the middle of this clearing, the turtle stopped. "Here," she said, "is the glade of time. Whoever sits here in silence and listens to their heart can find out the truth about the direction they should go. I don't decide. Nor the wind, nor fear. You alone." Lizi laid her body on the grass and closed her eyes. Tano did the same, although more skeptical. Time seemed to stop. Nothing was heard, no birds, no wind, no water. Only a deep silence, in which Liza's heart beat more clearly than ever. And in that silence, she felt something, a direction, an inner light, like a ray of sunlight piercing the foliage. She saw a road, a hidden path where her sister's footsteps had once walked. She opened her eyes. "We must go northeast, Hio, the great quartz rocks." Tano shook his head. "How do you know?" "I feel it. I knowed I can't explain it, but it's clear." The tortoise smiled broadly, with a calm air. "Finally, you heard what you needed to hear. Wisdom is not just what you are told, it is what you silently acknowledge." The turtle led them a little further, to an opening between two hills. There, she showed them a dry tree that had a spiral-shaped hollow. "This is the entrance to the glass road," she said. "The end of it is the Crystal Lake. But be careful. The lake is not shown to just anyone. Only to those with pure intentions and an open heart. There, the water reflects not only the face, but also the thought." Tano looked at her curiously. "Have you been there?" The tortoise closed her eyes for a moment. "I was a long time ago. When I was young and wandering. The lake showed me myself, but also what I would have become if I had not followed my calling. It scared me, but it changed me." Lizi approached her and touched her lightly on the side of her shell. "Thank you, Turta. We will never forget what you offered us. Someday, we will return. Maybe yes, or maybe not. Not all roads return. But in every journey, something of us remains. And here, in this clearing, your memory will endure." With sure, but emotional steps, Lizi and Tano stepped through the hollow and disappeared over the hill. Behind them, Turta remained looking at the sky. A bird with broad wings floated overhead, a sign that balance had been restored. The Crystal Lake awaited them. But it wasn't just a destination, it was a mirror of the soul. And what Lizi and Tano would discover. There would change not only their quest, but themselves. Chapter 5. Meeting Luma, the lost sister. It had been days since Lizi and Tano had set out from the glade of time, guided by the wisdom of the turtle Turta. They had climbed rocky slopes, crossed thorn bushes, and sneaked through dry fields, avoiding the unseen eyes of predators. As they advanced northeast, everything became different. The air was colder, and the ground vibrated in a strange way, as if something ancient awaited them. One gloomy morning, as they climbed a steep ridge of white gravel, Lizi stopped suddenly. "Do you feel him?" she asked. Tano tilted his head. "What?" Silence. "It's not like other places. Full. Like a space where something beats, but without sound." He was right. All around, nature seemed to have held its breath. There were no birds, no wind, no rustling. There was total silence. And then suddenly, Crystal Lake appeared in front of them. Hidden between two quartz slopes, the lake was unlike anything they had ever seen, a perfect, undisturbed mirror that reflected not only the sky, but seemed to return to the viewer its own image and hidden thoughts. The water had a bluish tint, but from time to time it lit up in shades of purple, emerald green or gold, as if responding to the emotions of those who looked at it. Lizi slowly walked towards the shore. Tano stayed behind, as if afraid. Lizi bent down and saw her face reflected in the water. But she was not alone. In the reflection appeared someone else, a familiar face, a sweet smile, a white stripe that crossed her neck. She started and turned her gaze suddenly. On the other bank, near a grove of alders, a figure stood motionless. It was a lizard, but not just any lizard. It was taller than Lizi, with darker scales, almost copper, and a scar under its left eye. It wore a small necklace of braided grass and resin beads around its neck. Her eyes, deep and tired, filled with tears. "Lizi," said the voice that had watched over her as a child. Lizi froze. Tears flowed from her eyes involuntarily. Without saying anything, she threw herself into the water, but Tano stopped her with a jump. "Wait. The lake is deep and cold. We have to go around it." While Tano held her tail, the figure on the other bank approached. "It's me, Luma." Lizi didn't need any more explanations. Her sister was there. Alive. Changed, but unmistakable. She felt her presence in her bones, like an old and dear melody, which she had thought lost. They went around the lake, and each step was a heartbeat. When they finally met face to face, the silence between them was deeper than 1,000 words. They had touched each other with their paws, to make sure that it wasn't an illusion. Then they hugged each other tightly, between sobs and sobs. "You've grown up, little lizard," Luma said. "And you left. And you never came back." Lizi answered with a deep sigh. Luma looked down. "I was injured. After being attacked by a snake named Mamba, I crawled here. People saw me. They caught me. They kept me in a big glass box, in a house. A child took care of me, but I was a prisoner. One day, I escaped. I ran away, injured and scared. I found this lake, and hid here. I became someone else." "Why didn't you come back?" Lizi asked in a low voice. "Because I didn't know who I was anymore. Until now. Until you came." Tano, who had been respectfully silent until then, cleared his voice. "So, you are Luma. Are you Lizi's sister?" asked the search over. "The search is just beginning," Luma answered gravely. The three of them sat down in the shade of a tree, looking at the lake. Luma told them everything, about the days spent in captivity, about the things she learned from watching the people around her, about her fears, about how the crystal lake had called to her one night, showing her who she had been and who she could be. "The lake healed me. It showed me all my mistakes, but also all that was good in me. I was reborn. Here I created a new life for myself. But I could not forgive myself for leaving a family behind. I never hated you. I just wondered if you had forgotten about me," Lizi said in a soft voice. Luma reached out a paw and took her sister's in her palm. "I never forgot. It just hurt too much. Now, it's time for us to get back together. Your mother would have been proud of you." A cloud passed over the lake, and the reflection of the water changed. Lizi looked at herself again, and, this time, she saw not only her face, but Luma's, next to her. They were united. They were whole. "What's next?" Tano asked, looking at the sunset. Luma stood up and looked away. A new journey to the edge of the human world. Now we go not only to find each other, but to understand. Maybe we can help. Lizi smiled. She had found what she was looking for. But she had discovered even more. A sister, a new friendship, a greater purpose. Crystal Lake had not been the end of the road, but the beginning of a new world. Together? She asked. Together, Luma and Tano answered in unison. And so, under the clear sky and above the magical waters, 3 souls set off again. But this time, they were not looking for anyone. Instead, they were building something. A bridge between worlds, between the past and the future, between nature and people. And nothing was stronger than the bond that united them. Chapter 6. The Orchard and the Vivi Cow. After the emotional reunion at Crystal Lake, Lizi, Luma and Tano continued their journey to the realm of people and their souls. Mixed with the joy of reunion, curiosity, fear and hope also bubbled. Nature was left behind, and the landscape changed with every step. The dense bushes and wild grass gave way to manicured meadows, wooden fences and trees planted in perfect rows. Nothing here seems accidental, Tano remarked, with a raised eyebrow. Because it is not, Luma replied. People put order around them, even in the chaos of nature. That's how they calmed their minds. As they advanced, the air became warmer and more fragrant, and in front of them stretched a huge orchard. Apple trees, pear trees, plum trees, all loaded with ripe and shiny fruits. Lizi's scales shone in the sunlight, and her eyes widened in amazement. It's like a dream, and it smells sweet, she said, almost reverently. But the dream became reality when a huge silhouette appeared from between the trees. It was round, white with black spots, and it moved slowly, with heavy but sure steps. It had large, wet and warm eyes, and from its snout came a pink tongue that grazed tactfully. A cow, whispered Luma, trembling. Lizi quickly hid behind a stump, and Tano pulled her behind a tree trunk. Is she dangerous? Lizi asked. No, I don't think so. She seems gentle. But the cow had already noticed them. She raised her head, flapped her ears and approached with soft steps. She didn't seem scared, but rather curious. What do we have here? She asked in a deep, gentle, but strong voice. Maybe she's a dreamer? Tano said. Or maybe we dream, Lizi added. The cow giggled. Don't dream, my dears. My name is Vivi. I'm an orchard cow, a guard by day and an advisor by night. And you? What are you doing here? Luma took a step forward, respectfully. We are looking for understanding. Of your world of people. We come from the land of Nale. I am Luma. This is my sister, Lizi, and he is our friend, Tano. Vivi nodded. The land of Nale. I have felt your energy since you entered the orchard. You are connected to the earth. Good. Curious. And former wanderers, right? Lizi blinked. Yes. Can you help us? I can. But first, let's get out of the sun. Come with me to the stable. That's where the real stories begin. They followed Vivi through the orchard, and on the way, the cow told them about the people. How they came with large baskets to pick the fruits, how they smiled and talked loudly, how some whistled happily, and others played a small box with strings, a guitar. Some are good. Others, too quick to notice what is beautiful. But most, are dreamers without time, Vivi said, with a trace of sadness in her voice. The stable appeared at the edge of the orchard, like a palace for animals. It had a rusty tin roof, old but well-kept wooden walls, and was surrounded by a large yard, with fresh hay and troughs with clear water. Inside, a few cows were sleeping peacefully. A cat was dozing on a bale of straw, and a hen was tactfully pecking under the benches. The little cow. Vivi offered them a shady corner, with a soft bed of hay. You can stay here as long as you need. You are safe. And if you are really curious, tomorrow I can take you close to the owners of the farm. They are nice people. They could show you what their world is like. Do you really trust people? Tano asked, skeptically. Not in all of them. But in some, yes. I saw the woman crying one day when a wounded bird died in her hand. And I saw her smiling at the lambs when they were born. There is hope, my dears. You just have to know where to look. Lizi and Luma looked at each other in silence. Was it everything they had dreamed of? Was the world of people as they had imagined it? Or were they on the verge of a new loss? Night fell over the stable like a warm blanket and the semi-darkness. Lizi curled up next to Luma and rested her head on her shoulder. Do you think Mother would have been proud of us? Yes, whispered Luma. Because I didn't give up. Tano, from a bale higher up, muttered. I think this cow is a magical being. They all laughed softly, and their laughter echoed between the walls of the stable like a blessing. Morning found them awake. Vivi was already grazing peacefully outside, and in the distance human voices could be heard. Lizi looked between the boards and saw 2 children running through the grass, a woman carrying a basket of apples and a man repairing a gate. They are so different, said Lizi. And yet, as fragile as us, Luma completed. Today, we will step into their world, Vivi whispered, approaching. But you will do it carefully, with an open mind, and with a fearless soul. Lizi took a deep breath. She stretched her limbs and smoothed her scales. She was ready. Let's begin. And so, with full hearts and uncertain steps, the lizards of the Nale land stepped out into the light, show people to answers. And perhaps, to a new world where nature and humanity could meet again. Chapter 7. Calf Sony and the Milk Story. The first rays of morning bathed the stable in a warm golden light. Lizi and Luma had slept almost pressed together, deep in a sleep in which dreams of people, happiness and missing mothers mixed without clear boundaries. Tano was still dozing, but his eyes moved under his eyelids as if he were dreaming something alert, perhaps a run through the tall grass or a heroic fight against an imaginary enemy. Lizi was the first to wake up. She shook her head slightly, then stretched her limbs and looked around. There was a deep silence in the stable, disturbed only by the rustling of straw and the deep breathing of the animals. From somewhere, in a dark corner, a faint sound was heard, almost a meow. But it was not a cat's. Rather, a kind of crying. Lizi slipped discreetly through the straw and he approached. There, on a soft layer of hay, lay a young calf, with brown fur and big sad eyes. Its head was lying on its paws, and its muzzle moved gently, as if in a sigh. Hey, are you okay? Lizi asked gently. The calf started slightly, but it wasn't scared. It just blinked. Not really, said the calf. I miss my mother. Last night they milked her again. And she didn't give me any milk. Luma had come closer in the meantime, hearing the conversation. What do you mean, they milked her? She asked, sitting down next to Lizi. The calf stood up slowly, its knees shaking a little. Tea was still small, and its steps had something hesitant in them. I'm Sony, she said, introducing herself, and my mother is Vivi. You've probably met her. She was taken to the barn at dawn. People come there with buckets and milk her. They take the milk out of her and take it into the house. I say it's for the children. For cheese, butter and something they call cottage cheese. Lizi and Luma's eyes widened. They had never heard of anything like that before. But it's yours, right? Lizi asked, surprised. Yes, I mean it should be. But Mother says that's the way it is with people. That since cows live next to them, they have to share. That's the agreement that was made a long time ago. Luma sighed. It's strange, seeing your mother tired but smiling, while she gives to others what you would have needed. Sony nodded. Yes, but my mother says it's not just about what we get, it's also about what we give. Milk is not just food, it's part of a long thread that connects all things. The cow, the man, the earth, the grass, the rain. The thread of life, Lizi whispered, staring into space. Then her gaze darkened a little. But what if people take too much? Sony shrugged. That happens too, but not all of them. The family that owns this farm is gentle. The children always come to pet me. They bring me carrots, sometimes biscuits. That comforts me a bit. Luma smiled. She remembered an old dream, in which an animal with wet eyes and soft fur wrapped her in a warm embrace. Can you show us the barn? She asked, curious. Yes, but you have to be discreet. Not all people are ready to see talking lizards. With small, careful steps, Sony led Lizi and Luma through the yard, bypassing a few wheelbarrows, bales of hay, and a stone fountain. They slipped under a fence and arrived at a large red barn with the door ajar. Inside it was cool and smelled of hay, old wood, and something fresh, maybe freshly milked and a corner. Vivi sat quietly, tied lightly with a rope to a hare. Next to her, a woman in a white apron, her hair tied in a kerchief, was pouring milk into a metal bucket. Next to her, a little blonde girl watched the process with wide eyes. Look, Maria, see how the milk is flowing? It's warm, that's the best. And then we drink it, right? Asked the little girl. Yes, but first we boil it to be sure. It's like a gift that the cow gives us. But we must be grateful. Let's never take more than we need. Lizi and Luma watched the scene fascinated. They were witnessing something profound, a silent dance between giving and gratitude. People didn't just take in some cases, they even thanked. Maybe not all people forget, whispered Lizi. After the woman and the little girl left the barn, the two lizards approached Vivi. I saw everything, Lizi said. It's strange and beautiful at the same time. That's life, dear. A mixture of pain, balance and trust. Sometimes you have to give, to receive back in a form you never dreamed of. But don't you feel used? No, because I choose to see the gift I give, but I receive peace, shelter and protection. Once in ancient times, cows ran through the forests and fled from wolves. Now they live next to people. It's a different kind of wilderness, more domestic, but still part of life. On their way back to the stable, Sony led Lizi and Luma to a nail where something hung that looked like a thin, colorful blanket. This is an old garment. People call it a t-shirt. It's made of cotton, a plant. But what's amazing is how people weave threads, cut them, sew them, and then wrap their bodies with them. Lizi carefully touched the material. It's like a leaf, but made by hands. Exactly, Sony said proudly. People don't have scales, fur or feathers, though they create their own skins, from cloth. It's fascinating, isn't it? The world looked around. Everything was built, created, combined. Every detail seemed to hide a story, a thought, a need. I'm more naked than us, but more skilled. And yet, still so fragile. When evening fell, Lizi and Luma sat down next to Sony in the stable. Tano, finally awake, listened to their story with his mouth open. So milk is a kind of treasure? He asked. Yes, said Lizi. But one that only flows if there is trust between the one who gives and the one who receives. Tano shook his head. The world of people is full of paradoxes. That's right, said Luma. And that's why it's worth discovering. That night, their dreams were white and sweet, smelling of warm milk, straw and promises. Chapter 8. The sheep pasture and the guard dogs. The morning sun rose gently over the hills, bathing the entire pasture in a warm light, honey and gold. Lizi, Luma and Tano walked carefully through the tall grass, still damp with the night dew. In the distance, white, rounded silhouettes could be seen, moving slowly, stirring the earth with their quiet steps. They were sheep, a whole flock. The wind brought the smell of cut grass, wet wool and tree bark. The sounds intertwined harmoniously, the dull bleating of the sheep, the distant barking of the guard dogs, and the song of a lark hidden among the clouds. Wow! So many, Luma whispered, fascinated. They are like clouds on earth. Or like breathing snowdrifts, Lizi added, smiling. Suddenly, an old sheep, with rougher fur and a wise look, broke away from the flock. She approached with sure steps, but without haste. You are not from here, she said in a warm but firm voice. I am Nura, the old sheep. I guard the stories of the place, just as dogs guard the flock. Lizi and Luma introduced themselves politely, and Tano made an awkward bow, drawing a smile from the corner of Nura's eye. We came to learn about the world of people, Lizi said. We have already seen cows, barns, even clothes. But this pasture, the flocks, are something completely new to us. Then you have stopped where you should, said Nura, sitting down on a mound of earth, like a queen in the middle of her kingdom. The story of the herd is a story of trust, order and danger, a danger with fangs and yellow eyes. The wolves, as Nura began to speak. The three little creatures sat down in the shade of a dove bush and listened attentively. The herd seemed to quiet down at the old woman's voice, as if the entire pasture were holding its breath. We, the sheep, are creatures of the crowd. We live in groups. We move together. We rest together. In solitude, a sheep becomes weak, disoriented. In a group, however, we find safety. But not only among ourselves. That moment, from behind a rock, a short bark was heard, followed by the appearance of a huge dog, with grey fur and watchful eyes. Another followed him, walking silently, but with a latent strength in his muscular body. They are Wolf and Zor, said Nura. Brothers by blood and guard. Without them, the flock would be easy prey for those who lurk in the shadows of the forest. Those who lurk? You mean the wolves? Tano asked, trembling slightly. Yes, Wolves do not come from hatred, but from hunger. But hunger darkens their minds and makes them dangerous. When evening falls and silence falls over the pastures, they come. Not always, but often enough so that we never forget. And what do the dogs do? Luma wondered. Aren't they afraid? Fear has no place in the heart of the guard, said Nura. Wolf and Zor do not fight for glory. They fight for us. They throw themselves before the predators, bark, attack, chase. There are shadows in the night and thunder on the ground. The dogs approached and sat down next to Nura, as if their silent presence had strengthened the story. Why are the people keeping you? Asked Lizi. For the wool, Nura answered simply. From it they make clothes, blankets, carpets. But also for our milk, sometimes. However, above all, they keep us because we are part of the old order. A village without a flock is like a forest without birds, sad and silent. And what do you get in return? Good grass, clear water, shelter in bad weather. Sometimes a comfort. Real people know that the worries of a flock are not weighed only in profit, but in balance. Tano stood up and walked towards Zor, the older dog. He stopped a few steps away, respectfully. Have you really fought a wolf? Zor looked at him for a while without blinking. Then he nodded gravely. More than once, it's never the same. Some come alone, hungry and desperate. Others come in packs. Then the fight becomes silence and fire. Are you afraid? Fear comes, but I leave it at the edge of the pasture. I am the heart of the fight. Its only duty. A long pause, in which the wind gently stirred the dog's hair and the green grass. Lizi thought about her own journey. She too had come from afar, and she had fought with dangers. But the dog fight was not for discovery, but for defense. It was a different kind of courage. One without glory, but full of purpose. Can you show us your herd up close? Luma asked. Of course, said Nura. They stood up and walked slowly through the white crowd. The sheep seemed curious at first, then quiet. Only low bleating and soft footsteps could be heard. Some smelled them, others ignored them completely. Each sheep has its place? Asked Lizi. Not a fixed one, but over time we learn to stay close to those with whom we feel safe. Some friendships last a lifetime. Others are born in a few moments. But the herd is a big heart that beats from hundreds of small hearts. Sunset, when the shadows lengthened and the sun descended among the hills, Nura led them to the edge of the pasture. Now you must return. When night comes, and the earth closes its eyes, your place is not here. The wolves have no mercy on the little ones. Thank you for the story, said Lizi. It was more than a lesson. It was wisdom. Good day, children, said Nura. And remember, every journey needs guards. Sometimes, they are silent, but always vigilant. On the way back to the stable, Tano was silent for a long time, with his head bowed. Finally he said, I think I want to be like Zord. Guard something. Tio have a duty. Me too, said Luma. Not only to discover, but also to protect. Then we learn well, said Lizi. Not only about the world, but also about ourselves. And in that moment, under the slowly fading sky, stepping lightly through the shadows of the evening, the three little creatures understood a great truth. That sometimes, the most important stories are not those lived in front of the world, but those lived quietly, in the service of others. Chapter 9. The Mare Rena and the Foal Zephyr. Morning had dawned serenely over the enchanted land of the world of people. The air smelled of fresh hay, birch bark and peace. Lizi, Luma and Tano woke up in the corner of a barn, wrapped in a few large, soft leaves. They had crept there the night before, after leaving behind the sheep pasture and the story of old Nura. We still have much of the human world to discover, Luma said, looking out through the cracks in the wood. I would like to know what life is like for those who run faster than the wind, said Lizi, remembering the elegant silhouettes she had seen the night before, from afar. Horses, Tano murmured with admiration. That moment, a rhythmic clatter of hooves, accompanied by a deep and musical neigh, echoed from nearby. The three of them hurried out of the barn and found themselves in a large pen, bordered by a wooden fence. In the middle of the pen, an imposing mare, with glossy coffee-colored fur and warm eyes, walked slowly, and behind her, a playful foal, with thin legs and a shaggy mane, hopped in wide circles. Good morning, curious voices, said the mare, approaching. I am Rena, and this rascal is my son, Zephyr. What a beautiful name, said Lizi sincerely. I have always wanted to meet horses. You are so elegant and fast. Running is our joy, said Rena, smiling. But also our duty. You want to know how we live? I invite you to our story. The three approached the fence, and Rena began to tell them about the life of horses in the human household. Zephyr, always restless, kept circling around them, sticking his nose between the fence boards, pricking his ears and trying to understand why all the attention was focused on his mother. We, horses, are among the oldest friends of humans. Since ancient times, we have helped them travel, work the land, carry burdens and even fight. To fight? Luma asked. Yes, Rena answered. In the old days, people would take us to wars, riding us and carrying swords and shields. But those times are gone. Now here in this household, we are gentle and dignified helpers. We pull carts, take children to school, walk tourists through the nearby forests. And people respect you for that? Tano asked skeptically. The good ones, yes. Those who understand that a horse is not just strength, but a soul. We have big hearts, loyalty and a memory that forgets neither good nor bad. Zephyr came and lay down on his side, tired from all that playing. Lizi looked at him with tenderness. What happens to the foals? How do they grow? At first, foals are raised by their mothers, free from work. They run, learn, play. But slowly, the man begins to get them used to the saddle, the bridle, his voice. They learn to follow commands, to be patient, to have trust. He is not forced training, but a friendship built with care. And if they don't want to? Then the man must listen. Scared or forced horse becomes dangerous. Those who know how to love a horse do not rush it. They talk to it, caress it, give it time. This is how harmony is born. Rena led them to a shaded area, where there was a watering trough and a manger full of hay. Nearby, a man in green overalls was scattering straw and humming a song. That's our master, Rena said respectfully. He doesn't talk much, but he has gentle hands and a firm step. He never whips us. He never leaves us hungry. He knows that a happy horse works with heart, not fear. But, wouldn't you like to be free? Luma asked, looking at the wide sky. Freedom doesn't mean running away, but being where you feel good, without chains. Even if you're in a pen, I'm not a prisoner. I choose to be here. I have food, peace, and my son grows up safely. I like what you say, Lizi said. I never thought that someone could choose to be tied to people and feel free at the same time. Because true freedom comes from trust, Rena said. Zephyr stood up and approached Tano. Do you want to climb on my back? Tano stumbled with emotion. Me. But I'm too small. There's no such thing as too small for a journey, chuckled Zephyr. Carefully, Tano climbed onto the foal's fluffy back, and Zephyr began to run slowly in small circles. Laughter and shouts of joy filled the air, and Rena watched them attentively, but calmly, like a mother who knows her son is taking his first step towards adulthood. See. We don't just carry burdens, we also carry dreams, and games, and courage. At the end of the day, when the sunlight was turning warm and orange, Lizi and Luma sat down next to Rena. What we learned today is more than a lesson about horses, Lizi said. It's about trust, balance, and choice. About how strength can be gentle, Luma added. And about how, even though people need you, you are not their slaves, Tano said. You are partners. That's how it should be, Rena said. That's how good is. And when good happens, it's felt in our steps, in the way we lay our heads in the evening, in the way we give birth to our children. Zephyr approaches, dozing. Good night, little friends. May you have a smooth journey and a gentle wind. Thank you, Lizi said. We will never forget what we experienced today. Me neither, said Tano. It was the gallop of the heart. And so, with their souls full of admiration and understanding, the three little beings left the horse pen and headed for their next adventure, knowing that the world of people is much more nuanced than they had initially thought, and the most precious lessons often come from those who seem to say nothing, but say everything through gestures, steps and hearts. Chapter 10. Coco the Rooster and the Chickens in the Yard. The sun was slowly rising over the village, sending golden rays over the red roofs and old wooden fences. Lizi, Luma and Tano were walking slowly down a narrow alley, bordered by bushes and a few bushes of wild lavender. They were tired after the adventure with the horses, but also full of curiosity. Where are we now? Tano asked, yawning. In a human courtyard, Luma said, smelling the air. I smell corn, and straw, and eggs. Eggs? Asked Lizi, stretching her neck. Do you mean we're approaching birds? They didn't have time to finish talking when a towering rooster, with fiery red feathers and a high crest, appeared in front of them, like a palace guard. Watch out, strangers. Who's stepping on the grounds of the Cocoa Rooster's courtyard? Tano took a step back. Lizi swallowed hard, but then gathered her courage. We're sorry if we bothered you, Mr. Rooster. We're Lizi, Luma, and Tano, travelers through the human world. We just want to learn. The rooster puffed out its chest and tapped the ground 3 times with its claw. So, seekers of wisdom. Then you've come to the right place. I am Coco, the master of this yard and the supreme leader of the chickens. Welcome to my feathered kingdom. The yard was full of life. Chickens of all kinds were pecking in the corners, a duck was bathing in a puddle, and 2 turkeys were walking with dignity in circles. In a wooden corner, a turkey with its tail spread out like a fan was repeating its conquest routine, without much success. Do all the birds live here? Luma asked. That's right, Coco replied. Chickens, ducks, turkeys, we are a motley but united community. Each one has a purpose. And what is your purpose? Tano asked curiously. The hens lay eggs, Coco explains proudly. It is their sacred mission. Every morning before the sun rises, they enter the nest and lay their gifts. Then the man comes and collects them. Tea is a ritual, an unwritten pact between man and bird. Lizi raises an eyebrow. Isn't it hard to give something every day? Sometimes, yes, an old hen admitted, approaching. But we are well fed, we receive grains, clean water, and we have a warm shelter. Our effort is recognized, and the egg is a part of our life. Tea is not a sacrifice, it is a contribution. I am Gara, added the hen, shaking her grey feathers. If you want, I can show you how we live inside. With the rooster's approval, Gara led them behind a shed, where there was a wooden shelter, with nests arranged in rows. Inside it was dark and warm. The smell of straw and fresh feathers hung in the air. The hens were sitting comfortably in round nests, and some were carefully hatching their eggs. This is where we rest, and here we leave our eggs to the world, said Gara. Have you always grown up here? Luma asked. Not all of them, answered Gara. Some come as chickens, others are brought in. Some grew up freely in yards, others were raised by people. But we all adapt. Because there are many of us and we support each other. Are there conflicts? Asked Tano. Of course, Gara chuckled. We still pinch, we still run away from each other, but we are a hierarchy. Coco the rooster keeps us in order, and each of us knows her place. Outside, Coco resumed her role as guard. With a determined gait, she inspected the yard. From time to time, she climbed onto a board and launched a long crow, which echoed throughout the household. Is that your way of communicating? Asked Lizi. It is the dawn song. Coco said emphatically, I warn all beings that the day has begun and that this yard is protected. Not only for birds, but also for people. I am their natural clock. They wake up when I sing. Tea is a tradition older than the smoke of chimneys. Beautiful, said Luma, impressed. But also a great responsibility. A true leader does not run away from responsibility, said Coco with a twinkle in his eye. From a corner, a faint squeak was heard. Chick was struggling to emerge from a broken shell. Lizi and Tano approached curiously. A hen was standing above it, with her wings slightly spread. Look, said Gara in a low voice. Life begins again every day. We are not just birds locked in a yard, we are beginnings. What is it like to be a mother? Asked Lizi. It's like carrying the future inside you, said Gara. Sometimes it's hard, but when a chick looks at you for the first time, you understand that everything was worth it. And what happens to the chicks? They grow. Some become hens, others roosters. The strong ones stay here. The weak ones leave. That's life. But everyone gets a chance. Around noon, the children of the household arrived in the yard. Little girls and boys threw grains, laughed and ran in circles around the hens. The birds retreated elegantly, accustomed to human agitation. Coco stood up again on the board. These are the little people. They are still learning respect. Some have it, others discover it over time. But we, the birds, are patient. Do they like being with you? Luma asked. Sometimes. Sometimes they come just to have fun. But if they learn to observe us with an open heart, they will understand more about life than a book can tell them. Towards evening, the sun began to hide, and the chickens slowly retreated into the shelter. Coco sang once more, long, like an evening call. Lizi, Luma and Tano sat on a plank by the fence, silent. "Today we learned what a community means," said Lizi. "And what it means to give, day after day, something of yourself," said Luma. "Without always expecting something in return," Tano completed. "Birds may seem simple to us, but they are among the most worthy beings," said Lizi. "And life, even between bars, can be full of meaning, if it is lived with purpose," said Luma. "Or with the crow," Tano laughed. Coco approached them and bowed his head. "Thank you for listening to me. Sometimes, roosters don't just have loud voices, but also stories to tell. May you have a smooth journey ahead. And if you ever hear a crow echoing from a yard, know that maybe it's not just a sign that it's morning, but a reminder of a lesson from the world of birds." And with those words, he turned towards shelter, leaving behind the night that was slowly falling over the feathered kingdom. Chapter 11. Mitty the cat in the barn. After a day full of sounds, colors and hustle and bustle in the chicken yard, Lizi and Luma, accompanied by Tano, felt the need for a quiet break. Wandering past the old barn near the yard, they had heard a barely perceptible noise, a slow purr and gentle footsteps. Curiosity led them towards a wooden door that creaked slightly in the wind. "Maybe it's a good place to rest," said Lizi, tilting her head towards the door that seemed to hide something. When they pushed the door, a warm breeze greeted them. Inside, the shadow of old boards and the smell of dry hay mixed with something sweet and familiar. In a low beam, with his eyes almost closed, sat a cat with thick fur, with black and white spots, and a bushy tail that curled lazily around its paw. "Hello, cat," said Luma, slowly. "Are you alone here?" The cat raised its head slightly, casting a lazy glance, and then returned to its comfortable position. "I am Mitty, dears. Welcome to my quiet world," he said in a low voice, like slime spread on velvet. "What world is this?" Tano asked curiously, trying to see him better. "The world of sleep, silence and half-forgotten dreams," said Mitty with a knowing smile. "Here time flows slowly, and people's worries never arrive." Lizi and Luma sat down on the soft hay on the floor. Tea was a completely different atmosphere from the hustle and bustle of the chicken coop or the galloping of the horses. "Tell us, Mitty, how do you live here, in the barn?" asked Lizi. "Well," the cat began, "my life is simple and profound. I wake up when I want, I sleep when I want, I hunt when hunger calls me, and then I rest in places where the sun caresses the wood. I have no worries, but no grand plans." "It seems like a life without responsibilities," said Luma, intrigued. "Maybe, but that's exactly its charm. The freedom to be lazy without guilt. Don't think it's easy to fall prey to sleep when the world is calling you to run." "What do you do when you don't sleep?" Tano asked. "I walk around the barn, inspect the wheat, listen to the sounds of the night and dream. I dream of adventures, of places I've never visited, of people and other animals. A dream is a world in itself." "Do you have friends here?" asked Lizi. "Friends," laughed the cat. "I have those who tolerate me. The mice in the barn, with whom I have constant fights, the pigeons in the attic, who don't really like me, and the old dog in the village, who leaves me alone because he knows that I am the master of the shadow." Mitty began to tell about his daily routine. How, early in the morning, when the sun's rays barely penetrated through the boards, he would lie down on the porch, his eyes closed, letting the warmth caress his fur. Then, he said, "I'll make a short foray into the barn to make sure that nothing disturbs the wheat and corn. It's important to keep order here." "And how do you deal with the mice?" asked Tano. "Ah, they are a different story. They are small, fast and cunning. But I am faster and more skillful. A continuous fight between us, but without hatred, more like a game." Lizi laughed. "So you are a kind of barn keeper?" "You could say that, yes. But I don't want to be a harsh keeper, but a wise one. If the mice knew this, maybe they would see me differently." While Mitty was telling the story, the sun's rays were getting lower and lower on the ground, leaving long shadows across the barn. The cat stretched out a paw, looking for a softer place, and curled up again. "And what is the world of people like for you?" Luma asked. "A noisy and hurried world. They run after things, forgetting to stop and listen. I offer them a silent lesson. Silence and patience are stronger than crazy running." "Do you think we can learn to be quieter too?" asked Lizi. "Of course. Time spent with yourself, listening to your thoughts, is a gift that few can afford. Why laziness is not a weakness, but an art not rush to judge silence, because in it the most precious treasures are hidden. The world looked around, looking at the wheat laid out in neat piles, the hay smelling of summer and the deep silence that reigned everywhere. How beautiful it is here, she said. It was as if the world had stopped in place. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, Midi replied. Stop running and look. Observe the world around you. In silence, everything makes sense. And what is your biggest dream, Midi? Asked Lizi, curious. The cat sighed deeply and looked towards a dark corner. To sleep under a bright star, not to be woken up by any noise, and to dream of a world where all creatures are at peace, a world without fear, without worries. Tano approaches and gently strokes his head. Thank you for sharing your world with us, Midi. It's a lesson for all of us. Any time, little one, and you, when you get tired of running, come here, my door will always be open. The sun was going down, and the shadows were lengthening in the barn. Lizi, Luma and Tano were saying goodbye to Midi, feeling that they had learned something new about patience, peace and the beauty of simple things. On the way out of the barn, Lizi turned for one last look at the cat who was lying lazily on the porch, his eyes half closed. Sometimes the greatest adventure is learning to sit and listen, she whispered with a smile. And so, with calmer souls and clearer thoughts, the little explorers set off on their journey through the world of people, ready for new encounters and stories. Chapter 12. The Girl Who Understood the Language of Animals. Morning had crept gently over the hills, drawing long rounded shadows over the pasture near the barn. Lizi, Luma, and Tano walked slowly along a beaten earth path, still carrying in their souls the silence of the barn and the memory of Mitty the cat. The air was cool, and in the distance they could hear a rhythmic jingle of bells and the tramp of hurried footsteps. Lizi started and looked up. There's something, a large group of footsteps. They don't sound like people, but they don't sound like herd animals either, she said. Maybe we should go to a bigger road, said Luma. Let's go up the hill, we'll see better from there. When they reached the top of the hill, the view that unfolded before them was a completely new one. In the valley, a column of people and animals was slowly heading towards a place full of colorful tents, cartwheels and flags fluttering in the wind. It was a fair as only people can create, noisy, lively and full of scents. But what caught their attention was not the fair itself, but a little girl who was walking ahead, alone, talking happily to a duck that was following her disciplinedly. Did you see what I said, Buby? If you ate all the worms in the garden, then Grandma will give you corn. But don't lie. The duck quacked, and the little girl laughed and continued talking. She really talks to the duck? Asked Tano in amazement. Moreover, it seems like she understands her, said Lizi, her eyes wide with amazement. The little girl, who did not look older than 10 years old, had her hair tied in 2 braids and a yellow dress with colorful patches. She walked confidently, with a bright expression, as if each animal around her was an old friend. When the 3 little creatures slowly approached the road, the little girl stopped suddenly and turned. She looked directly at them. Her brown eyes were shining. Hey! What are you? You are not from here, are you? Lizi and Luma looked at each other quickly. Who was this girl who spoke to them with such ease? You can hear us? Lizi asked slowly, incredulously. Of course I can hear you. The little girl replied enthusiastically. My name is Ina, and I can understand the language of animals. It is something I have always known. What does always mean? Tano asked, curious. Since I was little. Since I was playing with the piglets and talking to the pigeons in the attic. Everyone said I had a rich imagination. But I knew it wasn't imagination, it was real. Ina sat down in the grass and motioned for them to come closer. With a rare gentleness, she handed them a piece of dry bread and a sprig of clover. You know, every year I go with my grandmother to the village fair. I help her with the animals, and I understand them, talk to them, calm them down. Some people think I'm just lucky. But you know the truth. And no one asked you how you do it? Luma asked. Yes, some look at me strangely. Others smile and say I'm a dreamer. But the animals know who I am. They recognize me. Ina seemed to radiate a mysterious warmth, a kind of invisible light that made the animals feel safe around her. Lizi felt that she had finally found a man who was not just an observer, but part of their world. Where are you going now? Tano asked. To the fair, Ina answered them. It's a special day. Today a merchant is coming who sells a wind harp. They say that it can sing on its own and attract birds from the forest. But more than that, I felt that I had to come today. Maybe because I was going to meet you. Ina, we would like to go with you, said Lizi. We want to learn more about the world of people. With great love. But you have to be careful. Not all people are like me. Some can't hear your voices and may think you're just ordinary lizards. The road to the market was a real revelation. Ina walked with small but sure steps, telling them about each household they passed. Who lives there, what animals they have, which are gentle and which should be avoided. Mr. Petrica lives in the house with the red roof. He has an old dog who knows how to open the gate with his paws. He doesn't like to be disturbed. Further on, there is Mrs. Arnie, who talks to the flowers every morning. And they answer him, but too softly for people's ears. The fair was full when they arrived. People of all ages were wandering among the stalls with honey, vegetables, tools, clothes and wooden objects. There were whistles, children's laughter and the jingling of coins. Ina hid Lizi, Luma and Tano in her large wicker basket, among leaves and soft cloths, so as not to attract attention. It's better this way. I'll take you out when we get to the playground in the park. No one is surprised there, she whispered, and away. She stopped at a stall where an old man was selling clay tablets painted with animals. Ina looked at one for a long time on which was drawn a green lizard with big eyes. It looks like you, Lizi, she said with a smile. Maybe it's a sign. To the edge of the fair, under an old walnut tree, Ina put down the basket and set them free. The two lizards and little Tano lay down in the grass, happy to breathe fresh air again. Ina sat down next to them. Do you see this fair? Everyone thinks it's just for people. But animals come here too. Some brought, others on their own. Some dogs come just for the strong smells. Birds fly from tree to tree and observe everything. And today you have come as part of it. We never thought we would be welcomed so warmly, said Luma. Sometimes, you just have to find the right person. And I found you, and you found me, said Ina. The day passed like a dream. Ina told them stories about winter in the village, about how the wolves sang in the forest and how an old owl told her one night that one day she would meet beings beyond human understanding. Maybe the owl was referring to them. Towards evening, when the shadows were lengthening, and the fair was beginning to fade, Ina led them back to the barn, where the cat Mitty was still purring lazily. I'll leave you here, she said. But I know we will meet again. Maybe in a dream, maybe one day when the wind whispers your name to me. Lizi and Luma came closer and pressed their foreheads to her warm hand. Thank you, Ina. You gave us more than just a fair day. You showed us that there are people who can hear us. And that gives us hope. Ina smiled and walked away lazily, with the empty basket and Buby the duck in her wake. Chapter 13. The Sunday Fair. The morning sun spread a gentle light over the gentle hills near the village. The air smelled of dew, of fresh earth and of freshly mown hurried. It was Sunday, and in the village on the edge of the forest, that meant a fair, an event awaited with excitement by everyone. People, animals, children and, in this case, two brave lizards, Lizi and Luma. Attracted by what Ina, the girl who understood the language of animals, had told them, Lizi felt that she had to see with her own eyes what the world of people looks like when it becomes a market, a stage and a story. Tano had decided to stay near the barn, tired of so many novelties, but Lizi and Luma had once again plunged into the unknown. They carefully hid in the wicker basket that Ina carried delicately. The two sisters slipped away in the middle of a hectic day. The Sunday fair came to life. People were coming from all directions, some on foot, others in carts pulled by horses or donkeys, holding sacks, cages, bags of seeds, or wooden crates in which birds were struggling. Do you feel it, Lizi? It's different from the day before, Luma said. More agitation. More anxiety? Yes, it's like there's a stir in the air. People don't just come to walk. Today they come to change things. Ina could feel the sisters' agitation. She lowered the basket and spoke to them in a whisper. You have to be very careful here. The animal fair is beautiful, but sometimes it's also harsh. People don't look at animals the same way I do, or you do. She led them to an area where, on a trampled meadow, there were rows and rows of pens, cages, makeshift stalls and rudimentary stands. The smell of hay mixed with that of fur, feathers and animal sweat hung heavily in the air. A rooster crowed somewhere far away, while a few dogs barked impatiently from their chains. Lizi and Luma sneaked out of the basket, hiding between tufts of grass and cartwheels. They slipped through the straw on the down, avoiding the hurried steps of the sellers and buyers. "Look there," Luma said, pointing to a pen of lambs. "They look like fluffy balls that make sad sounds." An elderly man, with hands cracked from work, proudly showed off his lambs. Child asked him if one of them could be taken home, and his mother asked how much it cost and if it's good for slaughter. "Slaughtered?" asked Lizi, trembling. "Are they talking about sacrifice?" "It seems so," Luma whispered. "Here, animals are not just friends. They are food, work, merchandise." A few stalls above, 2 horses stood tied to a pole, looking at each other. One was weak and tired, with a sad look. The other, a young stallion, with a rich mane, nervously scratching the ground. "What will happen to them?" asked Lizi. "Probably one will be bought, taken to another village, and the old one will maybe be exchanged for something, or abandoned." Further on, a woman in a blue apron had a cage full of rabbits. The children crowded around to pet them, while the woman explained to their parents that they were good to cook, but also good to play with, if you don't want to eat them right away. The sisters had remained still. "This is the world of people," whispered Luma. "Sometimes warm and friendly, sometimes cold and hurried. I don't understand. How can people love their animals, but also sell them, cut them up, turn them into products?" Luma looked into the distance, at a family who had just bought a puppy from a basket. The child hugged him lovingly to his chest, while his mother smiled warmly at him. "Maybe, because I don't see all animals the same. Some become friends, others remain resources. There is a thin line between love and utility, which many people don't see." And a quieter corner of the market, an old woman was selling only 3 hens and a rooster. She stroked their heads, spoke softly to them, and one by one refused the people who asked for the fattest specimen. "That's Grandma Nina," said Ina, approaching them. "She never sells to someone who doesn't have a soul." Lizi and Luma climbed back into the cart. They had felt enough. They had seen beyond the charm of the fair. The world of people was full of contrasts. Where some saw smiles and color, others, like them, discovered difficult questions. Ina led them to a less hectic area, where some street artists were performing for children. Lizi looked carefully. On a large canvas was painted a farm with smiling animals. They all seemed happy. "It's not really like that, is it?" she asked. "Sometimes it is," said Ina. "In some places, people are starting to understand. They raise animals with care, they respect them, they no longer see them just as objects. But it's a long way." "And what can we do?" Luma asked. "Let's carry on what we saw, let's not forget, and teach others. Stories heal, that's how change begins." Towards evening, the fair was winding down. The stalls were emptying, the carts were leaving, and the heavy steps of the vendors betrayed the fatigue of a long day. Lizi and Luma, with their souls full of questions, were returning to the barn. "What a strange day," said Lizi. "Strange, but necessary. Now I understand the world of people better. It's not just beauty, it's also pain and choice." "Do you think we'll remember everything?" "Not only will we remember it, we will tell stories. And maybe one day, the world of people will learn to truly listen." Ina smiled at them, caressed them gently and said, "The world is full of fairs. But it is rare to find eyes that can see and hearts that can feel. You have both, don't forget that." Chapter 14. On the Back of a Donkey. After a day full of questions at the fair, Lizi and Luma woke up early in the morning, in the golden sunlight that filtered through the branches of the apple tree near the barn. There was a strange silence, a rustling in the air that told them that the adventures were not over. On the contrary, they were just beginning. Ina, the girl who understood the language of animals, had prepared a new surprise for them. She was waiting for them with a wide smile and a small basket, this time not to hide them, but to introduce them to a new friend, a donkey with grey fur and long, playful ears. "I introduce you to Motu," said Ina. "He is the funniest and smartest donkey in the whole village. And he will take you to the city." The city. Just the word made Lizi and Luma start. Until then, they had discovered the world of the people in the village. Courtyards, stables, pastures and markets. But the city? Well, this was a completely different world. Large buildings, winding streets, noises, unknown smells and perhaps more dangers than they had encountered before. "Are you sure you want to go?" Ina asked, leaning towards them. "We have to," Lizi replied firmly. "If we want to truly understand the world of people, we can't stop here." I'm coming with you too, Luma added, smiling at her sister. Motu, the donkey with the playful gaze and the ever-present smile, or so it seemed from the way his mouth was twisted, greeted them. Good morning, ladies. Get on my back. It's not a limousine, but I promise you an unforgettable trip. Lizi and Luma carefully climbed onto a thick blanket placed on Motu's back. The donkey had a swaying and rhythmic gait, and the bumpy roads of the village seemed to them, from that height, a real adventure route. In a way, Motu told stories incessantly. He was a legendary donkey, who had lived among people for many years and who knew a lot about their customs. In the city, he said, it's different than here. There's no grass under your hooves, but stones and asphalt. You don't see roosters on the fence, but cars honking their horns. And above all, everyone doesn't greet you with, hello, anymore, but they hurry past you, like timeless beetles. And what do donkeys do in the city? Asked Lizi. There are few left. I have been there a few times, carrying bags or wood. But now, horses or trucks do most of the work. A donkey like me is more of a decoration or an attraction for children. Luma, looking at the road, asks shyly, and isn't it sad? No, not at all. Motu said, laughing, I find joy in any road, even if it leads to the unknown. And then, when you have big ears and humor, you don't have time to be sad. As they approached the city, the landscape changed. The houses made of clay and wood gave way to brick buildings. Then, the electrical device in the distance, a tram screeching on the rails, made everyone silent for a moment. Lizi hugged Luma. That sound is like a howl. It's the city that makes its presence felt, said Motu. It's not dangerous, but you have to be careful. Everything is fast here. Hurry is the law on the sidewalks. People in colorful clothes, with phones to their ears, were hurrying to destinations known only to them. Children with school bags were running to school, street vendors were shouting their wares, and cyclists were whistling among the pedestrians. It's overwhelming, said Lizi. It's like an anthill, Luma added. Motu stopped in a small square where access was allowed with pack animals. Here, old customs were still preserved, people who brought goods with the help of animals. Here, the donkey did not seem to be a rarity. Get down here. The city is at your feet. I'll rest and wait for you here. Go and see what you have to see. But be careful. Not all hearts are open in the city. The sisters slipped through flower pots, cardboard boxes and bags forgotten on the floor. The city was a different realm. High walls, glass windows, automatic doors that opened without you touching them, people who talked to themselves, actually, on headphones, and an air that smelled of coffee, gasoline and hot asphalt. Look, there's a bookstore over there. Lizi exclaimed, so many books. Words everywhere. And there's a restaurant over there. What a smell, said Luma, looking through the window where plates of steaming food could be seen. People live differently here. They don't grow their own food, they buy it. They don't talk to the animals, but they have pictures of them on their t-shirts. They don't look at the sky, but at the screens, said Lizi, amazed. They stopped in a park. There, among the trees planted in straight lines, some children were feeding pigeons. Little boy saw the two lizards on a bench and smiled. Lizards. They're not dangerous, right? No, they're beautiful, another child answered. Lizi and Luma looked at each other. Maybe the city wasn't completely devoid of understanding. Maybe, here too, there were hearts that felt. When they returned to Motu, the funny donkey was waiting for them, chewing carrots, and a vendor told a joke. What's a donkey doing in a city? He gets lost among sidewalks and wonders where the grass is. We're back, said Lizi. And we learned something. And what did you learn? Asked Motu. That the city is different, but not completely foreign. People are in a hurry, but some still have eyes for animals, children, stories. You just have to know where to look. You understood quickly, answered Motu. That's the lesson. The world of people is complicated, but not without hope. The journey back to the edge of the village was peaceful. Lizi and Laga now looked at the road with different eyes, thinking about all the beings they met and all the questions that remained in their souls. What's next? Luma asked. Let's take the story further. Let's tell what we saw, and maybe one day, help the world become kinder. Motu whined briefly. You too. Small but brave. You have a whole world inside you. And thus, riding a donkey became the foundation of a new wisdom. Sometimes, the most important journeys do not begin with big steps, but with long ears, humor and an open heart. Chapter 15. The Road to the City. On a quiet morning, with fresh air and gentle rays of sunlight, Lizi and Luma woke up in the corner of the barn where they had hidden overnight. The adventure in the human world had so far taken them through villages, courtyards and pastures, but something in their hearts told them that they still had much to discover. The city, that unknown and mysterious land, had become the next step in their journey. Ina, the girl who had understood their language, greeted them with a serious but bright look. She was wearing a blue summer dress, and she had a bag of apples and dry bread in her hand. "Today is a long journey," she told them. "The people from the neighboring village are going to town with vegetables and fruit. I can squeeze you into one of the crates in their cart. It won't be an easy journey, but you'll get there unharmed." Lizi and Luma looked at each other. They had no idea what awaited them, but their resolve was clear. The world of people didn't end at the farmyard fence or the field with cows. In the city, people lived differently, and if they wanted to truly understand this world, they had to see it with their own eyes. Ina carefully placed them in a crate with lettuce leaves and a few bundles of parsley. The crate was in turn placed in an old cart, pulled by 2 brown horses, with gentle eyes and drooping manes. The farmer driving the cart was an old man, with sunburned skin and hands cracked from work. He didn't know that under the green leaves were 2 lizards in search of meaning and wisdom. The cart creaked gently on the cobblestone road. On the side of the road, yellow fields stretched to the horizon. The wind blew gently, smelling of earth, wildflowers and dust. The world slowly raised its head from under the leaves and looked at the sky. "Lizi, do you realize? We are not just 2 lizards in a world of animals. We are witnesses to a huge world, in which every sound, every smell, every step is a story." "You're right. And I think the city will be the most complicated story so far." The road was neither easy nor short. The horses were moving slowly, and the sun was getting stronger. On the way, the cart stopped, to get water from a well, to drop off goods at other farms, or to pick fresh vegetables from neighboring gardens. Each stop, Lizi and Luma would sneak in and listen. Each person had a different story, a different tone, a different concern. Some talked about the market, others about prices or the weather, but they all seemed caught in a kind of dance of necessity, in which work and worry for tomorrow never ended. At a stop at the edge of an orchard, a little boy of about 5 years old approached the crate and, through the leaves, caught sight of Lizi. His eyes lit up and he said, "Look, a lizard." His mother, a young and tired woman, smiled weakly. "Leave her alone, dear mother. She doesn't bite, but she might get scared." "She's beautiful. It seems like she's looking at me," said the child. Lizi, her heart beating faster, understood. Even in the hurried world of people, there were eyes that looked with kindness. That encouraged her. After the cart started moving again, her sister murmured, "This world may be hard to understand, but it's not without hope." At some point, the road became smoother, but also noisier. More and more houses appeared on the side. They were no longer made of clay or wood, but of brick, with shiny tin roofs. People wore colorful clothes, some rode bicycles, others walked, holding bags or talking on the phone. Cars honked from time to time, and the sounds of the city mixed into an organized chaos. "We've arrived," Luma whispered, with emotion in her voice. "The city is even bigger than I imagined," added Lizi. The cart stopped in a crowded market, full of stalls with fruits, vegetables, cheeses and flowers. The old man got out and began to unload the goods. Lizi and Luma sneaked out from among the leaves and crept to the edge of the crate, looking around. Everything was different. The sounds, the smells, the lights, everything pulsed with a new energy. Around them, people were buying and selling, talking, frowning or laughing. An old man was selling honeycombs, a woman in a red headscarf was selling parsley and carrots, and a young man with glasses was calling out the prices of tomatoes. In a corner, a little girl was sitting with a puppy in a blanket and selling flower crowns. Her eyes were serene, but they seemed tired. Lizi looked at her and understood that the city meant not only hustle and bustle, but also struggle and hope and untold stories. "Come on," said Luma, "we must move on. Let's see how the animals live here. How are the birds in the city? Where do cats live? Are there any free animals in this place?" Lizi nodded. "Yes. And maybe we will find." Chapter 16. The City, a crowded and noisy place. As the first rays of morning bathed the rooftops on the outskirts of the city, Lizi and Luma stood on the edge of a wooden box, among tomatoes, cucumbers and lettuce, looking in amazement at what was unfolding in front of them. They had been brought to the city in a cart full of vegetables, and now the urban world appeared to them for the first time in all its grandeur and chaos. The city was not a simple large settlement. It was a living organism, in constant movement and transformation. The air vibrated with sounds, and colors and shapes followed each other with a dizzying speed. For small beings accustomed to the forest, the Aled River and the warmth of the sun filtered through the leaves, the city was a real sensory shock. "Look at all the buildings," Luma said with wide eyes, looking up at a multi-story structure. "And all these, are they houses?" asked Lizi, trying to understand the logic of that concrete and glass anthill. The streets were wide and winding, covered with asphalt instead of grass. Cars of all colors and shapes moved in all directions, some making noise, others just sliding like fish in concrete waves. Horns, revving engines, hurried steps, mixed voices and metallic sounds combined into an urban symphony that left no room for silence. "It's noisy," said Luma, covering her ears with her paws. "And it never seems to stop. It seems like everyone is running away, but they don't know where," added Lizi. Even the wind seemed different in the city. It no longer brought with it the smell of leaves, but strange smells, of gasoline, fried food, synthetic perfumes, detergent, dust. Everything seemed too much, too fast, too foreign. The two lizards slipped out of the vegetable crate and crept onto the sidewalk, among the hurried feet of the people. Here everything seemed magnified. The shoes, the bicycle wheels, the dogs on leashes, the shop windows. The people seemed huge, and unlike in the village, no one noticed them or seemed to pay any attention to them. "No one sees us," said Lizi. "Here everyone is preoccupied with something else. No one looks down, only forward," said Luma, carefully following a lady in high heels who was talking on the phone. A bus passed by them, stirring up a strong wind that almost lifted them into the air. They took shelter under a bench and watched in fascination as people of all ages got on and off, all with their eyes on their watches, phones or shopping bags. "How do they manage to live like this?" Luma asked. "Maybe they get used to it, or maybe, in this hustle and bustle, they forget that there are other ways to live," Lizi replied. In front of a cafe, people were standing in line. Some were buying coffee, others were talking to each other or with little boxes they held to their ears. "These must be wireless talking devices," said Lizi. "And that's the smell of coffee." "Bitter, but pleasant," Luma said, taking a deep breath. They carefully walked through a pedestrian market, where people were selling fruit, flowers and colorful objects. A woman dressed in loose clothes was playing a guitar and had a basket in front of her for money. Luma stopped and looked in amazement. "People are singing in the street?" "Yes, but not for the forest, but for money?" asked Lizi, not completely understanding the meaning. In the middle of the city stood a tall building made of glass and metal. Clouds and horns were reflected in it. It was as if the sky and the city were mixed there, without a border. "What building is that?" Luma asked. "I think it's a workplace. Here, people come in the morning and leave in the evening. They spend their days between the walls, with artificial lights, keyboards, and paper. How strange. And sadness doesn't touch them." "Yes, but here, sadness is covered by noise. It's not so easy to hear," Lizi said in a low voice. They took shelter in a small park nearby. Although they were between two busy boulevards, the park was an oasis of greenery. Ornamental trees, flowers of all colors and a few pigeons that nibbled on crumbs. A child was playing with a toy car, and an old woman was feeding a stray cat. "Look. Even here there is peace," said Luma. "It's a corner of nature hidden among the concrete. People need it, even if they don't always recognize it." "We also need to understand everything we see, don't we?" asked her sister. "Yes, that's why we came." After resting a bit, they set off further. They arrived at a huge intersection, where colored traffic lights dictated the order. Green for passing, red for stopping. Trucks, taxis, bicycles, electric scooters, everything moved with dizzying precision. "Do other animals live here?" Luma asked. "Maybe just dogs, cats, or pigeons. But they no longer have the freedom of home. Everything is controlled. And us. How do we get back?" "I don't know yet. But maybe the answer lies somewhere here. Towards evening, when the city lights were coming on, and the windows were turning into sparkling eyes, Lizi and Luma found a vegetable cart again. They hid among the cabbage leaves and watched the city that was beginning to pulsate in cold colors. Neon lights, headlights, advertisements. "The city never sleeps," said Luma. "No. The city breathes at its own pace. Noisy, hurried, sometimes blind. But even here you can find stories, friendship, and perhaps a touch of magic." And so, in the diffuse light of an urban night, the two lizard sisters understood that the world of people was vast, complex, and often chaotic. But it was not without beauty. He just took patience and courage to truly see it. Chapter 17. The Supermarket. The Forest of People. For Lizi and Luma, the forest had always been a familiar space, a place full of greenery, warm sounds, and safe hiding places. But that morning, they were in a completely different forest, one cold, bright, and smelling of plastic, detergent, and packaged food. They were, by mistake, inside a supermarket. It all started innocently. The two sisters, still fascinated by the city, had slipped into the backpack of a little girl who had left them a slice of apple on a bench. They had thought it was just an adventure of a few minutes, but the backpack had been taken straight into a large building, with doors that opened by themselves, a magical phenomenon in their eyes. "Did you see how the doors opened? And no one pushed them?" Luma whispered, her eyes wide. "I think people have invented something that senses their movement, like invisible eyes," Lizi replied, already feeling overwhelmed. When they jumped out of their backpacks, they stepped straight into a huge world, full of color and artificial smells. The floor was shiny and smooth, the shelves rose like modern cliffs, and everything was labeled, packaged, and arranged with an almost eerie precision. "It's like a forest of boxes," Luma muttered. "Yes, but here everything is lifeless. The fruits no longer hang from the branches, but sit in trays. The nuts are not on the trees, but in plastic bags," Lizi observed. They slipped among the packages of biscuits and boxes of cereal. A lady pushed a trolley past them, without noticing them. The background music, the calm voice from the loudspeakers announcing the offers, the beeps from the cash registers, all of this confused them. "Here, people come to stock up, like ants gathering supplies," Luma said. "Yes, but they don't pick anymore. They choose from the shelves, and then they pay. They pay with some papers or cards. I don't know exactly how this works, but it's a kind of barter, only modern." They arrived in a cold sector, where the air seemed frozen. There were refrigerators and freezers with transparent doors. "This is where they keep the food cold. Look, frozen fish, pizza, ice cream. The world is shaking." "What kind of forest is this where everything is closed, wrapped, and without the natural smell of life?" "A forest where people have replaced nature with packaging." But soon they realized that they were lost. They didn't know where they had come from, and each aisle seemed identical to the other. Shelves of canned goods, then detergents, then hygiene products. It was impossible for them to find their way. "This is where we were?" Luma asked. "I don't know. They all look the same. There's no smell, no natural sound to guide us," Lizi said, anxiously. They tried to orient themselves by the light, but the light was everywhere, strong and cold, and no sun, no clouds. Just fluorescent bulbs. Suddenly, they were almost hit by a cartwheel. They quickly hid in a tea box. "We're too small here. People wouldn't even notice us if they stepped on us," Luma said in a low voice. "We have to find a way out. Maybe a checkout line, maybe the area where people pay." They approached one of the cash registers, where an employee with a badge on her chest was scanning a family's products. The two sisters sneaked under the counter, where it smelled of paper and cardboard. There, for a moment, the world seemed calmer. "Maybe if we grab a bag, we can go outside with the groceries. Or maybe they'll put us in the fridge." "Luma, this is not a joke. We have to be careful." At that moment, the little girl who had brought them here spotted them. It was the same as the backpack. She remembered the apple offered in the park. She bent down and, with a gentle gesture, held out her hand to them. "Look who's here," the girl said softly. "What are you doing, little ones? Did you come after me?" Lizi and Luma didn't know whether to run or stay. But the girl's voice was calm, almost familiar, reminded them of Ina, the girl from the village who understood the language of animals. "You took us to a huge place," Luma said. "Is this The forest of people? Asked Lizi. The girl seemed to understand. She put them in a cloth bag and left the store with them. The air outside, although polluted, suddenly seemed fresh compared to the artificial smell of the supermarket. It's good to be outside. Even in the city, Luma whispered. Yes, it was like a labyrinth in there. Everything seemed abundant, but empty. It's strange, isn't it? So much food, but without the real taste of the forest. The girl placed them on a bench near the store and looked at them with a smile. She offered them a piece of apple again. It was the same simple, natural taste, a reminder of the forest in the Nale land. Maybe the supermarket is the forest of people, but one made by them, not by nature, said Lizi. And maybe they don't even know what a real forest looks like anymore, added Luma. We know it, and we will keep it in our hearts, even if we wander through their world. They looked at the large building, with its colorful logo and automatic doors, and that forest of packaging. The two sisters had felt for the first time how far people were from nature. And at that moment, they had decided something important. They would move on, but they would never forget what the real forest meant. Chapter 18. The Owl in the Attic. After the overwhelming experience in the supermarket, Lizi and Luma felt the need to breathe, to find some of the peace they had known in nature. The city continued to amaze them, but it was also starting to tire them. They crept from one bench to another, from the roof of a car to the windowsill, looking for a safe place to gather their thoughts and decide where to go next. Late one evening, the urban sky was stained with smoke, lit by light bulbs and headlights. The moon seemed lost among the antennas, and the wind brought smells of asphalt and dust. They took shelter behind a fire escape, attached to an old block of flats. Suddenly, Luma noticed something. Lizi, up there. See that open shutter? It looks like a loft. A kind of attic. Yes, and it seems quiet. Let's try to get there. Maybe we can find a place to rest. They carefully climbed the metal grate, stepping with small and careful steps. When they entered the attic, they were greeted by a dusty smell, mixed with the smell of old wood and cobwebs. The moonlight entered timidly through a broken window, and there, among old boxes and yellowed books, stood an imposing, almost motionless figure, an old owl, with eyes as big as lanterns. Who are you? A deep but gentle voice was heard. Lizi and Luma froze. I am Lizi, and she is my sister Luma. I came from the forest, from the land of Nale, and I arrived here in the city. We are looking for wisdom and a purpose in the world of people. The owl nodded slowly, as if it had been waiting for them. I felt your arrival. I am Striga, the owl of this old bridge. I have had my home here for decades. I have seen the city change, grow, forget. But I stayed. I am the silent witness of the forgotten world. Can you help us? Luma asked with a trembling voice. If you have come to me, it means that you are ready to listen, not just see. This world of people is not discovered with your steps, but with your heart. Many animals come and go, but few understand what they see. The owl turned slowly and took out from under a pile of books an old paper, colored with pale ink. He held it out to the lizards. This is a map, not of the city, but of places important to you. The map follows the paths of knowledge. It shows you where fragments of the connection between people and nature are still preserved. Lizi stared with wide eyes. The map had strange signs: a stylized flower, a tree, a bell, an open book, a broken cage, and a bird's footprint. What do all these mean? Luma asked. There are places where you will learn more than 100 words. The flower takes you to the botanical garden. The tree to an old library, where curious children still come. The bell to a church where animals can take shelter. The open book to a school. The broken cage to a zoo where animals dream of freedom. And the bird's footprint to a wooden bird that flies without wings, an aviation museum. Lizi blinked in amazement. Are there so many places in the city where nature still lives? It doesn't live like in the forest, but it still flickers. People haven't forgotten everything, they've just moved away. If you go there, you'll understand what needs to be saved and what needs to be changed. Maybe you can even help. The owl climbed down from the beam where it was resting and approached them. Its eyes were piercing, but not scary. Do you know why I gave you this map? Because our hearts are open? Luma asked. And because you still ask. When animals and people stop asking anything, they begin to forget who they are. The owl closed its eyes for a moment. When it opened them again, it seemed more tired, but also more at peace. I give you one last piece of advice. Don't rush. The world of people is not conquered by running, but by understanding. Wait, listen, observe. You will discover that in every person there is a piece of forest, even if hidden. Thank you, Scream, Lizi said gratefully. You are the first being in the city who has shown us a way, not just a destination. Don't forget who you are. Not when you are between the walls, not when you are between the books. And above all, don't forget to turn around. The owl rose and flew gently towards a high beam. Lizi and Luma remained looking at the map, in the moonlight. There were signs on it that they did not yet understand, but they already felt that they were no longer lost. Luma, now we have a purpose. And not just to learn about people, but to understand them and maybe, to help them remember nature. And you know what's strange? Luma said, smiling. This attic, old and dusty, seems the most alive place in the whole city. Maybe because there's an old heart that still beats here, Scream. They went out the broken window, with the map neatly folded under a dry leaf, carried like a treasure. Under the night sky, the city didn't seem so foreign anymore. Now they had a map, a road, and above all, the wisdom of an owl that watched from the shadows. Chapter 19. At School with Ina. After spending the night in the attic guarded by the owl Striga and receiving the map of places that preserve the connection between people and nature, Lizi and Luma felt a new breath of courage. They were no longer just visitors in an unknown city. Now they were travelers with a mission, with direction. And above all, they were no longer alone. Ina, the girl with the rare gift of understanding the language of animals, had become a real support to the dawn of a new day. The sun was lazily rising over the rooftops. Lizi and Luma, hidden in the pocket of Ina's backpack, looked at the city from a soothing perspective. Ina walked hurriedly, but carefully, keeping the backpack in perfect balance, so that the two lizards would not be disturbed. Wearing simple clothes and a discreet smile, the girl seemed like one of the many students heading to school. No one suspected that behind that quiet walk there was a secret world hidden, in which the voices of animals, the forest and the city intertwined. She arrived at an old but well-maintained building, primary school, with large windows and a flowery courtyard. The bell rang timidly, and the students began to gather in the inner courtyard. Ina entered through a side gate, known only to those close to her. The biology teacher, Mrs. Roxandra, greeted her warmly. Good morning, Ina. Did you bring anything special for us today? Ina smiled complicitly. Just some ideas. And maybe some unusual friends. In the classroom, the air was full of curiosity and the walls hung drawings of animals, botanical plates and quotes about nature. The children, 12 in number, sat down neatly, but bustled around enthusiastically. Ina opened her backpack carefully, and Lizi and Luma came out with small steps, climbing onto the teacher's desk. A murmur of amazement was heard. Two lizards. How cute they are. What are their names? Ina raised her hand and asked for silence. In a warm but firm voice, she spoke to the children. Please listen to them. They won't talk to you, but I can understand them. Their names are Lizi and Luma. They come from a land called Nale. They have traveled a lot and learned a lot about our world. Today they want to know how we, humans, think. Lizi took a step forward, and Luma climbed onto a leaf that Ina had placed especially for them. They spoke their thoughts with discreet gestures, and Ina put them into words. They wonder why human children learn in buildings and not in forests. Because here we have desks, teachers and books, said a little boy with blonde hair. But isn't the forest a teacher too? Ina asked in Liza's voice. Yes, said a girl from behind. The forest teaches us to be attentive, patient, to understand time. The teacher intervened with a smile. See, nature and education are not separate. In fact, here we try to learn about nature, to remember that we are part of it. Ina continued. The world wants to know what children dream about when they look out the window during class. Light laughter. I dream that I am a fox, said a boy. I like to sneak through the trees. I ride a giant bird, added someone else. Lizi and Luma blinked in amazement. These children's dreams were not so far from their world. I would like to show you something, said Ina, taking out of a small pocket of her backpack the map she had received from the owl Striga. The children approached curiously. The teachers from the other classes had also started to appear, called by the unusual hum. This is not a simple map, Einar explained. It is an invitation. Each symbol on it is a place where nature still speaks. The botanical garden, the school, the museum, the church, even the zoo, are bridges between the animal world and the human world. But not everyone sees them. Lizi and Luma looked for them and felt them. The little girl raised her hand shyly. Can we learn to feel too? Einar smiled broadly. That's what we do now. When you listen without interrupting, when you ask yourself, why, when you daydream, you already feel it. Professor Roxandra completed. And if you learn to look carefully at a lizard, a tree, a cloud, you will become not only better at science, but also better as people. Lizi and Luma felt their little hearts beating with gratitude. They had not expected to be so well received. The world of people now seemed more welcoming, more open to them. After the lesson, Einar took them to a quiet room, called the Green Corner. It was a small space, with natural plants, a terrarium with insects, an empty cage and many books about animals. Einar whispered, "This is where I first dreamed that I was talking to birds. And here I understood that I was not alone." Lizi looked at her carefully. "This is the place where people become close to nature again, right?" Einar nodded. From a drawer, she took out a notebook and began to draw the faces of the two lizards, with delicate, almost reverent lines. "I want to tell you something," she said. "You don't just learn about people, we learn about ourselves from you. That means friendship between worlds." At the end of the day, when the students were leaving for home, several children approached Einar. "Can we come tomorrow with our drawings? We want to show what we dreamed about today with Lizi and Luma." "Of course," Einar replied, "we will put them in the Green Corner, where dreams don't die, but grow." And Lizi and Luma, sheltered again in the girl's warm hood, whispered to each other, "I didn't think school was such a lively place." "Me neither. Maybe man didn't break away from nature completely. Maybe he just forgot how to listen to it. And if we return home one day, we will know what to tell the others. Yes, that there is hope, and that there are children who still dream with their eyes open." Chapter 20. The Boots in the Closet and the Curious Boy. After a day full of emotions at school, Lizi and Luma were huddled tiredly in the inside pocket of Ina's backpack. The girl walked home with quiet steps, but her thoughts were still on the conversations of that day. She had felt them deeply, vividly, as if a new world was taking shape around her, a world in which people and animals were not as far apart as they seemed. When she got home, Ina put her backpack on the hanger, took off her shoes and quietly walked into the living room, where her brother, Matej, who was 7 years old, was lying on the carpet and making a puzzle with wild animals. Ina kissed him on the forehead and went up to the room, forgetting the backpack down in the hallway. For Lizi and Luma, that moment was the first step in a new, unexpected experience. Because of the position in which he had been seated backpack, the zipper had slipped slightly, leaving an opening. The lizard's natural curiosity pushed them to take a look outside. They saw shoes neatly lined up on the edge of the hallway closet, a small bicycle leaning against the wall, a warm light coming from under a door. "Maybe it's a room for little people," Luma whispered. "Or a nest. A place where people keep their precious things," Lizi added, looking at the shiny winter boots, placed at the base of a closet. Curiosity overcame caution, and the two of them silently stepped out of the backpack, carefully descending to the floor. They traveled a few meters to the closet, then crept inside among the forgotten slippers, boots and socks. There, at the base of a shelf, was an empty, soft space, lined with a thick winter scarf. "Perfect for resting," Luma said and curled up. "It's warmer here than in the nail forests, and it smells like—" "Little man," whispered Lizi, closing her eyes. But the silence didn't last long. The boy's light steps descended the stairs. Matej, who wanted to look for a lost toy in the pocket of his sister's backpack, noticed that the zipper was open and that something had come out. With wide eyes and a pounding heart, he put his fingers to his mouth and began to search the floor. It only took him a few seconds to see, right under the half-open door of the closet, two thin, green tails moving gently. He opened the door and dropped to his knees. "SSSHHH. What are you?" The boy's big brown eyes met the sparkling eyes of the two lizards. He didn't scream, he didn't run, he didn't call anyone. Only a smile trembled on his face, between amazement and wonder. "Are you real?" Lizi and Luma stood still. The boy seemed gentle, he hadn't reached out his hand, hadn't touched them without asking. I'm Matei. Aren't you saying anything? Luma took a step forward and raised his head, as if in greeting. The boy understood. Aha, don't speak, but understand. Just like Midi, our cat, he understands everything, but he never says anything. Without taking his eyes off them, Matei searched a small drawer for a box of unused plasticine, opened it and took out a clean cardboard. Then, in silence, he drew them with a pencil, trying to capture the shape of their slender bodies, long tails and sharp eyes. I'll keep you here, he told them softly, and put the box on the floor, opening the lid. If you want, it can be your secret home. The lizards looked at each other. It was clear. The child did not want to catch them or keep them captive, he just wanted to get to know them. Lizi entered the box first, carefully smelling the corners. It was clean, dry, and had an intimate air. The world followed her. It was like an improvised bed in a world where they did not expect to find shelter. No one will find out, I promise, said the boy. Not even Ina, she's too old. She thinks she knows everything, but sometimes she doesn't see what's right in front of her. Lizi stood up suddenly. It wasn't fair. Ina had saved them. She had carried them with care, given them trust and hope. They couldn't be unfair to her. What is it? Asked Matei, noticing Lizi's agitation. Would you like me to tell her? But Luma shook her head. Then, with a determined movement, she jumped out of the box, ran to the backpack and slipped back in. Lizi hesitated, then followed. Matei understood. He smiled sadly, but respectfully. He gently closed their zipper, whispered a good night, little friends, to them and went up to his room. The next day, Ina hurriedly went downstairs and took a backpack. She felt something different. It seemed lighter, but also warmer. In the classroom, when she opened it, Lizi and Luma were there. Sleeping on a corner of paper, between two books in the backpack, there was a clumsily written note. They are beautiful and well behaved. I haven't told anyone. I'll be careful not to scare them. Matei. Ina smiled, understanding that something magical had happened. Without words, her brother had known them, he had received them, had accepted them without having the gift of hearing them. And thus, the world of people opened up again. Not through grand gestures, but through baby boots, silent closets and curious boys who know how to listen without asking too much. Chapter 21. On the city roof. At dawn, the city wakes up with a special bustle. Timid horns, slammed doors, the smell of warm bread and revving engines, endless landscape where a moment of silence is valued like a treasure. 3 small and extremely brave beings were trying to find their way among cardboard boxes, plastic gutters and dry branches on the roof of an old building. Lizi, Luma and Tano, reunited the day before, after a long separation, had found their team spirit again, and in the middle of the urban noise, they had decided to climb as high as possible, in search of a clear view that would show them the way back to nature. They no longer had the owl's compass, nor the map, but they trusted each other, and homesickness was now their engine. They had arrived on the roof of an old house, on the outskirts of the city. From above, the city seemed an organized anthill, cars in a row, people walking in the same direction, the wind carrying advertisements and flying papers. But the horizon offered them hope, a line of greenery in the distance, maybe the beginning of the forest, maybe the land of Nale. We have to get there, Tano said, looking at the green line. But how? It's too far for little paws like ours, and too dangerous on foot, Luma added. Lizi silently looked up at the sky. Birds of all kinds were flying over the city. Pigeons, sparrows, even a stray seagull. And as an answer to her thought, 5 blue-gray pigeons emerged from a brick chimney, circling gracefully above the roof. They were passenger pigeons. Lizi recognized them immediately, agile flyers, with broad chests and intelligent eyes. Hey! She shouted, running to the edge of the chimney. Are you passing by? The pigeons stopped flying, then descended. Curious. One of them, older, with a white feather under his wing, spoke in a deep voice. Lizards. On the roof. That's news. What are you doing here, you sunbeams? We are looking for the way home. The land of Nale.It is beyond the city, beyond the asphalt, smoke and blocks, said Tano. And we want to get back to nature. We miss the peace, the leaves, the Aled river, Luma completed. The pigeons looked at each other. The old man shook his head. It is not easy. Long road. Dangers. But we are travelers. And our teaching says that every lost being deserves a helping wing. Could you help us? Asked Lizi. We can take you close to the forest, said another pigeon younger, with lively eyes, to an abandoned barn, from where the road to Nale is easier. We go there anyway. It's a routine stop for us. There was no need for any more convincing. The three lizards carefully tied a dry leaf to their front paws, as a belt, and the pigeons bent down, letting them climb onto their backs. Then, like smooth arrows, they rose into flight, taking with them 3 special passengers. The city was shrinking beneath them. The blocks became boxes, the cars ants, and the people moving dots. The wind whipped their scales, but the cold air cleared their minds. The flight lasted, and in the silence of the sky, each of them remembered something. Tano remembered the banks of the river, the games with Lizi, the first moments when he had dreamed of see the world. Luma remembered the roots she had left, her mother's care, the stories of forest spirits. And Lizi smiled. The adventures had transformed her. She was no longer just a curious lizard. Now she understood the world of people, animals, cities. She had understood fear, courage, trust. And now, on the back of a bird, with a heart full of longing and gratitude, she understood what it really meant to travel. The pigeons then soared in a spiral, descending towards a green area. The abandoned barn was close. There the flyers stopped. From here it's not long. You will find the river, then the path to Nale. Be careful. And, don't forget the sky, said the old pigeon. The sky is always there, above you, and in it you will find freedom, but also direction. Thank you, said Luma, bowing her head respectfully. It was like a dream, Tano added. No, it was real. And we will never forget, said Lizi. The pigeons rose again, flapping their wings, and the 3 friends remained on the ground, in the middle of the grass, with the sky above and the road ahead. Again, they were on the ground. But now, closer to home. And richer than ever in stories. Chapter 22. The Park with Children. The morning had begun gently, with the sun spreading playful rays over the city that was just waking up. After the night spent in the old barn, Lizi, Luma and Tano made their way through bushes and hedges, heading towards an area with lots of greenery and shady trees. They already felt closer to nature, although the traces of the city were still present. Cement alleys, painted benches and colorful garbage containers. They had arrived in a park, a place that seemed to be a bridge between the artificial world of people and the nature from which they came. It was a lively corner, where children's laughter intertwined with the chirping of birds, and cheerful puppies ran among the legs of the little ones. Parents, grandparents, teenagers and babies in strollers walked along the alleys, each with their own story, but united by the desire to spend time outdoors. Lizi stopped near a rose bush, inhaling the sweet scent of the flowers. What a strange place. But beautiful, she whispered. It's a meeting place, Tano said, looking at the children who were swinging and running on the grass. The little people come here to play, just like we did when we were on the riverbank. But animals play here too, said Luma, watching as a small black puppy ran away with a twig in its mouth, while a little girl giggled, running after it. Stepping carefully along the edge of the alley, the 3 lizards arrived near a wooden gazebo, where a group of children were drawing with chalk on the asphalt. There were naive but colorful drawings. Butterflies, trees, a smiling sun, a white cat and, surprisingly, even a green lizard with big eyes. Lizi laughed softly. It seems we are already famous among artists. Look, said Tano, pointing to a little boy in a yellow hat, who was holding a bird with a bandaged wing in his hands. A little girl was handing him crumbs, and the bird was pecking attentively, without fear. That's what friendship means, said Luma. People are not just hurried, noisy or dangerous. Many know how to love, to take care, to listen. The 3 approached the area with tall grass and wild flowers, where several squirrels were descending from the trees, and 2 rabbits were running through the bushes. Here the animals seemed free, but they were not afraid of people. The children watched them from a distance, laughing, but not trying to catch them. It was a delicate balance. Maybe people have learned, in a way, to respect nature, said Lizi. Or maybe just children. They don't judge, they're not afraid of differences, Tano added. That moment, a little girl with pigtails, wearing a polka-dot dress, sat down on the grass, not far from them, and in her hands she held a storybook, with large illustrations. She opened the book and began to read aloud, just for her. And the green lizard climbed onto the floating leaf, dreaming of a bigger world. The world started. "Did you hear?" she said. "It's about us. About a brave lizard." "It's no coincidence," smiled Lizi. "Maybe our world and the world of people are more connected than I thought." The little girl, sensing something nearby, looked around. Her eyes stopped at the 3 lizards, who were sitting quietly in the grass. For a moment, time stopped. The little girl didn't scream, she wasn't scared. She smiled broadly and brought her finger to her lips. "Chill. I see you, but I won't tell anyone." Then, she took a piece of apple out of her pocket and placed it next to them. She waited. Tano took the first step and smelled the apple. Tano took the first step and smelled the apple. Chapter 23. Parting with Aina. It was a calm morning, and the sky had warm shades of peach and pink, like a gentle promise of a new day. Lizi, Luma and Tano were in the garden behind Ayane's house, where everything seemed to have been designed for tranquility. Lavender bushes, a white gravel alley and an old wooden bench, on which Aina used to read in silence. They had experienced a lot since their departure from the Land of Nale. Adventures, meetings, emotions, discoveries. They had passed through places unimaginable for some lizards in the forest and had come to see the heart of the city, but also the heart of man. And throughout this journey, Aina had become more than a guide, she had become a friend. But every road, no matter how beautiful it is, has a moment when it must end. And that moment had arrived. Aina was sitting on the wooden bench, her palms clasped in her lap, looking with a warm smile at the 3 creatures that were looking at her with big, round eyes. Tano sighed, moving her tail restlessly. The world was sitting more withdrawn, thinking. And Lizi felt a knot in her chest, like she hadn't felt since she left home. "You have learned a lot here," Aina told them. "But what you brought with you from nature is more precious than everything you discovered. Your kindness, courage, openness are things that are missing in the human world." "Aina, we don't want to leave without knowing that you are okay," Tano said. "You helped us, you saved us, you spoke to us in our language." Aina smiled and, for the first time, her moist eyes betrayed a deep sadness. "I will be fine. I learned, together with you, that the world is full of voices. Not all of them are heard with the ears, some must be listened to with the soul. And you reminded me of that." Lizi took a step forward. "You are one of the rarest beings I have met. Not just because you understand our language, but because you looked at us with kindness from the beginning. You did not treat us as curiosities or dangers. You welcomed us as guests." Aina bowed her head slightly, then took a small cloth tied with a string out of her pocket. "It is for you, a gift, a map drawn by me, with all the places you have visited. Maybe you will show it to others, in your forest. Maybe you will tell the story of the people, but as it was, with light and shadow." The woman approached and carefully took the map. "I don't know if we will be able to reproduce everything exactly. But we will try. Because what we experienced here must be told. Nature and people must know each other better, to recognize each other." A light wind brought with it the scent of linden flowers. The garden seemed to breathe together with the 4 beings who, for a moment, formed a family. "How far is the Nale land from here?" Aina asked in a low voice. "Not too far, but the road is full of trials," Tano said. "And of beauty. If you walked it, Aina, you would see endless forests, clear springs, trees as old as the mountains and the song of birds that fear nothing. And you would be welcome there," Lizi added. "Any time." Aina closed her eyes for a moment. "Maybe one day, when the world of people will no longer be so noisy. When I will be a child again." That moment. The world came forward and touched her lightly with its paw. T was their gesture of farewell, simple and sincere. Aina smiled. "Never forget, you have built a bridge between worlds. And bridges don't have to be big to be strong. They just have to sincerely unite 2 banks." The sun had risen higher, a sign that time doesn't wait for even the most beautiful connections. Tano looked towards the garden gate. "We should leave. Before the city gets rowdy." "Yes," whispered Lizi, but she felt how each step was getting harder. Aina got up from the bench and accompanied them to the gate. There she bent down, and her voice softened. "Thank you for passing through my life. You left me a vivid memory and a lesson. And perhaps a promise that the world is not lost as long as animals still speak with confidence to people." The 3 lizards left the garden, leaving behind the house, the bench, the the smell of lavender and a smiling face that would remain forever in their hearts. On the way, no one spoke. Each was immersed in thoughts, in the emotion of separation, but also in curiosity about what would come next. The road home now seemed clearer to them, but at the same time more burdened. They were no longer returning like curious chickens, but like beings who had brought back wisdom. At the edge of the city, the forest, she stretched out her arms, as if ready to offer them shelter. They stopped for a moment and looked back in the distance. The roofs of the city sparkled in the sunlight. "Done," said Tano. "One stage has ended. And another begins," added Luma. "But we will not forget," said Lizi, clutching the map to her chest. Stepping on the soft moss of the forest, the three friends got lost among the trees, carrying an invisible treasure within them, the wisdom of the world of people, filtered through their pure eyes. And there, in the quiet garden on the edge of the city, Aina looked at the sky and whispered to herself, "Go well, my little ambassadors. You are proof that hope has no boundaries." Chapter 24. The Journey Back to Aled. The road to the orchard where Vivi, the gentle cow, lived was full of scents: ripe apples, fertile soil, freshly mown grass. There, between the trees, stood Vivi, rounder than they knew her, with a warm and sparkling gaze. "I can't believe it. The lizard sisters and their talkative friend are back. Come to me." Vivi was swaying slightly, enthusiastic. "I told everyone your story. Some didn't believe me. But look, I wasn't crazy." Lizi approached and hugged her with all her lizard powers. "We missed you, Vivi. And you should know that the calf Sony also stayed in our minds. He taught us that everyone has a purpose: the milk, the stable, and the people." "Ah, Sony. Now he's bigger than me. As for me, I've grown up a bit, but I'm still a joker." They all laughed and spent some time in the shade of the apple trees, telling stories and exchanging impressions. Every moment was like a thread in a fabric of memories, which made them feel at home again. In the evening, they finally arrived at the bank of the Aled River. Where the story had begun, years or just months ago, no one knew exactly. The river murmured just as it had then, clear, lively, familiar. A frog was hopping on a trunk, a dragonfly was flying through the air, and a few beetles were sneaking among the blades of grass. Lizi lay down on a stone warmed by the sun and sighed deeply. "We've arrived. But we're different. Maybe. But we're still us," said Luma. "Now we know who we are and what we can change," Tano added. In the distance, the sun was descending towards the forest, casting a golden light over the river. The world seemed to welcome them. Lizi closed her eyes and felt the wind playing through the grass. It was good, it was quiet, it was home. The return journey to the banks of the Aled River was not only a physical journey, but also an inner one. Lizi, Luma and Tano felt how each step towards their native land brought them not only peace, but also a deep sense of completion. They were finally together again, after an adventure that had opened their eyes and hearts. With all the lessons learned, with all the images kept in their minds, they felt that they had become more than brave lizards. They were carriers of a story. 2 days had already passed since they had left the city. They had walked through orchards, crossed hills, bypassed fields, avoiding the roads of people. They were guided by Ina's map, but also by the instinct deeply imprinted in them, which was to feel nature. When the forest became thicker, and the sound of crickets and birds replaced the urban noise, Lizi felt a pure joy in her chest. The world of people had been fascinating, but the calm green of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the smell of damp earth, all of these meant home. "The Land of Nale is close," Tano said, looking around. "Look at that twisted tree. I've known it since I was a child." "That means Aaron is not far," said Luma. "Do you remember him, Lizi? How he came down from his web like a hero?" Lizi smiled. "How could I forget? If he hadn't intervened in front of the mamba snake, our story would have ended before it began." When they stepped onto the meadow where they had first met Aaron, a wave of nostalgia swept over them. The leaves were thicker, and a fine web shone between 2 bushes. "Aaron!" Tano shouted. "Are you there?" A subtle, almost imperceptible movement had occurred in the center of the web. From the depths of the leaves, a familiar figure emerged, the Aaron spider, with its calculated gait and calm voice. "Well, what a surprise, walkers of the long road. I wondered if you would appear again." "We are back," Lizi said excitedly. "And we have a lot to tell you." Aaron descended closer, attentive to every detail on their faces. You have grown. Not in length, but in your gaze. I see something else there, more people, more wisdom. The city is a huge land, Luma said. Full of life, but also noise. We saw more than we could have imagined. And we met someone who understood us, added Tano, a girl. Ina. She listened to us, helped us, sent us back. Aaron bowed her head slightly. There are few who hear beyond words. Ina seems to be one of them. I am glad you were lucky. Now go, old Turtle is waiting for you. She felt your coming, even before you stepped on this meadow. The three said goodbye and set off for the old shore of Crystal Lake, where Turtle, the turtle, used to meditate in the sun. She was an imposing presence, despite her slow steps, and she remained in their memory as wise and gentle. When they reached the lake, a ray of sunlight reflected on her shiny shell. Turtle was there as always, looking at the shine of the water like an open book. I dreamed of you, she said before Lizi could greet her. I saw you riding a donkey and getting lost in a forest of shiny boxes. You aimed at the supermarket, laughed Luma. Yes, that's where we got lost. Turtle smiled broadly, with the kind of smile that doesn't need many words. You came back whole, and that's all that matters. You saw the world of people. And what did you learn? That they're like us, said Lizi. Sometimes confused, sometimes generous. That their world is complicated, but not soulless. And that nature is more precious than they know. Maybe we just need to remind them, said Turtle. You are that link now. We have a map from Ina, said Tano. Maybe we can use it to tell the story. A story told well can change hearts, murmured Turtle. Go, dear friends. Chapter 25. The world is bigger than we thought. After returning to their homeland, the banks of the Aled River, they all felt that their adventures had not ended. On the contrary, they had opened a new chapter, a deeper and more meaningful one. Lizi, Luma and Tano were not just three lizards who had wandered the world of people, but had become messengers of a deep understanding, a bridge between two worlds that often seemed to avoid and misunderstand each other. In this quiet morning, Lizi sat on a smooth stone, watching the sun slowly rise over the water. A fresh scent of grass and flowers floated in the air, and the chirping of birds accompanied her thoughts and her mind. All the recent encounters and experiences were arranged in order, making sense. The world is bigger than I thought, Lizi murmured to herself. It's not just ours, the lizards, or the humans. It's a whole in which everyone has a place. Luma and Tano moved closer, hearing her. What have you learned, Lizi? Tano asked, curious. That nothing is isolated. That humans and animals are part of the same story, but sometimes they forget to listen to each other. We saw with our own eyes that we can live together, that there can be bonds, friendships, and respect. Luma smiled. And that makes us, lizards, ambassadors of this understanding? Yes, Lizi said decisively. But not only that, I understood that we must be careful with every step we take in the human world, so be careful about how we can help them, without losing our identity. Tano sighed. But the human world is so big and complicated. With horns, cars, tall buildings, endless shops. How can we penetrate them and make a difference? Not by changing them, Lizi answered calmly. But by showing that another way is possible. That nature and people can coexist, and respect and understanding are the key. That day, the trio set out to share what they had learned. Then they met Aaron, the wise spider, who had listened carefully to their story. Humans and animals can coexist in harmony, said Aaron. But we must be vigilant. The world has changed a lot and each of us must know our role. Turtle, the turtle with a shell shining in the sun's rays, advised him. Wisdom comes from patience and observation. Observe how people use their gifts, but also how they hurt them. And never forget to listen. Listening is the beginning of understanding. As the days passed, Lizi and her friends collected stories, memories, but also ideas for a future in which people and animals respect their territories and help each other. In the banks of the Aled River, meetings with the inhabitants of nature brought an increasingly clear understanding. Vivi, the gentle cow, told them how people still try their best to maintain their connection with the land, but sometimes forget how important it is to protect the animals and environment. Nura the sheep shared their concern for her dog friends, tireless guards who keep the wolves at bay, but who sometimes feel misunderstood. I learned to understand them better, said Lizi. Each one has a role, even their fear or caution. All of this must be respected. One afternoon, the three were wondering how to tell people what they had seen and learned. And then an idea came to them. What if we told them our story? Said Tano. Yes, but let's say it differently, with soul, not just with words, added Luma. And so together, they began to create a story, one that would reach the hearts of people, young and old, story about friendship, courage and respect between different worlds. In the days that followed, Lizi noticed how the world had slowly begun to change around them. The people in the village had become more attentive to birds, more caring with dogs and horses, and the animals were increasingly finding their place next to people without fear. With this change, Lizi understood that harmony is not an unattainable goal, but a path to be traveled. That every day brings a new opportunity to learn, adapt and give. On a clear night, under the starry sky, Lizi reflected on everything she had experienced. I'm not just a small lizard, she thought, but a bridge between two worlds. And the world is bigger than I thought. More beautiful and complex. But, above all, it belongs to those who love and respect it. This was Lizi's inner and outer journey, a lesson about friendship, understanding and hope. The world was vast, but love for nature and the desire for harmony could bring people and animals together in a peaceful coexistence. Epilogue. The sun was slowly descending over the Nale land, covering the banks of the Aled River in a warm golden light. Lizi stood on the same stone where she once dreamed of unknown worlds. Beside her, Tano gnawed a dry leaf, and Luma looked thoughtfully at the shimmering water. They had returned home. But nothing was the same, and neither were they. Their journey through the world of people had left a vivid memory in their souls. Dusty roads, strong voices, curious eyes and full hearts. They had discovered not only amazing things, supermarkets, schools, rooftops and parks, and new emotions. Fear, amazement, admiration, longing. But beyond all that, they had learned that the world is not divided between us and them, but between those who choose to see and those who choose to pass by indifferently. Lizi had understood that people were not just misunderstood giants, but beings capable of care, friendship and gentleness. Ina, the girl who had listened to them and helped them, remained for them proof that bridges between worlds exist, if you have the patience to build them. In that quiet evening, Lizi smiled. She was no longer just a curious lizard from a corner of the nature. She was a storyteller, a witness to a big and diverse world, worth knowing. And she knew that one day, when other lizards would wonder what lay beyond the leaves and shadows, she would have something to tell them. Their adventure had not been about leaving, it was about learning, understanding, and returning, with a fuller heart and a more open mind. Because sometimes, the biggest changes begin with a small step of a lizard.